The world stood still for 7 minutes. On every screen, in every corner of the globe, a small girl with bright, curious eyes sat on a chair far too big for her. Her feet dangled above the floor, yet her words carried the weight of a seasoned scholar. This was Ava Williams, the 7-year-old prodigy the internet had nicknamed the human Google. The video, now viral, showed her effortlessly answering rapid-fire questions posed by scientists, journalists, and skeptics. "What is the Schwarzschild radius of a black hole?" one asked, a smug smile creeping across his face. Without missing a beat, Ava replied, "It's 2 gm over c squared, the radius at which the escape velocity equals the speed of light." The crowd gasped. "Who was the 23rd president of the United States?" someone else shouted. "Benjamin Harrison," she replied, barely blinking. It wasn't just her knowledge that stunned people. It was her confidence. Ava's answers weren't guesses. They were precise, delivered with a certainty that silenced every doubter in the room. Watching this unfold from his private office, Elon Musk leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of awe and curiosity. "Who is this kid?" he muttered under his breath. The video ended with Ava's soft voice breaking through the applause. "Knowledge belongs to everyone. It's not about knowing everything. It's about sharing what you know to make the world better." Elon couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just another viral sensation. Ava was something different, something extraordinary. And as someone who prided himself on recognizing potential, he knew he had to meet her. But first, he needed to test her. The news outlets exploded the next day. Headlines blared, "7-year-old prodigy stuns scientists." The human Google, genius or trick? Even Elon's name was dragged into the conversation after he liked and retweeted the video with a cryptic comment, "Let's find out." Social media erupted. "What does Elon Musk want with a 7-year-old?" one user tweeted. Others speculated that he planned to hire her for SpaceX or Tesla. Conspiracy theories spiraled out of control, claiming Ava was secretly an AI experiment gone rogue. Amid the chaos, Ava sat quietly at the kitchen table in her modest home, sipping hot chocolate. Her parents, Sarah and Michael, were glued to their phones, their faces a mix of pride and anxiety. "Ava," her mother said cautiously, "Elon Musk's team just emailed us. He wants to meet you." Ava looked up, her expression calm but her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "What does he want?" Her father cleared his throat. "They didn't say much, just that he's impressed and wants to have a conversation with you." "Will he ask me hard questions?" Ava asked, tilting her head. Her mother smiled nervously. "Probably, but you'll do great." Back in Los Angeles, Elon stared at a whiteboard filled with equations and sketches. He was assembling a list of questions. Questions so challenging that even his top engineers might struggle. If this girl was truly as brilliant as she seemed, she wouldn't just answer them. She'd solve them. But something about her intrigued him beyond her intelligence. There was a warmth in her words, a desire to share knowledge rather than hoard it. It reminded him of himself, back when he was a boy devouring encyclopedias under the covers late at night. "Let's see what you're made of, Ava," he whispered, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. By the end of the week, the internet was ablaze with anticipation. People across the globe speculated about the upcoming meeting between the world's most famous innovator and the little girl who seemed to know everything. The stage was set, and the world was watching. Ava stared at the email on her parents' laptop. It was official, an invitation from Elon Musk himself. The subject line read, "Invitation to discuss the future of humanity." "Sounds dramatic," Ava muttered, her lips curling into a tiny smile. Her parents, however, weren't smiling. Sarah wrung her hands nervously while Michael paced the room, rereading the email on his phone. "I don't like this," Sarah finally said. "She's just a child. Elon Musk is, well, he's Elon Musk. What does he even want with her?" Michael looked up. He probably just wants to meet her, see if she's the real deal. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Ava. "It's not about the opportunity," Sarah snapped. "What if he pressures her? What if he turns her into some PR stunt?" "Mom," Ava interrupted softly, her big brown eyes locking onto her mother's. "I can handle it. I want to meet him." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. Sweetheart, are you sure? You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not to us, not to Elon Musk, not to the world. Ava nodded firmly. I'm not trying to prove anything. I want to know what he's thinking. What kind of questions he has. Michael crossed his arms, nodding approvingly. She's right. She's curious. That's who she is. And honestly, who better to meet him than Ava? Sarah sighed, defeated. All right, she said reluctantly. But if at any point you feel uncomfortable, you tell us. We'll walk away. Promise me that. Promise, Ava said with a smile. The next day, a sleek black Tesla arrived outside their modest suburban home. The driver, a polite man in a crisp suit, introduced himself as a representative of SpaceX. We'll be taking Ava and her parents to a secure location for the meeting, he explained. Ava's little heart raced as she climbed into the car. The interior was futuristic, with glowing screens and a soft hum that barely hinted at the car's power. Her parents sat on either side of her, their nervous energy palpable. As the car sped down the highway, Ava gazed out the window, her mind buzzing with questions. She wasn't nervous, she was excited. What kind of person was Elon Musk? Was he as brilliant as everyone said? Would he try to stump her, or would he want to work together? When the car finally pulled up to the SpaceX headquarters, Ava's breath caught in her throat. The towering rocket in the courtyard gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of human ambition reaching for the stars. This is amazing, she whispered. Her parents exchanged a look. For a moment, even Sarah seemed awed by the grandeur of the place. Inside, a team of assistants greeted them and led them to a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a sprawling hangar. Rockets and engineers bustled below like a scene out of a sci-fi movie. Ava couldn't help but press her nose to the glass. Are they building the Starship? She asked, her voice tinged with wonder. Yes, a deep voice replied from behind her. Ava spun around to see Elon Musk standing in the doorway. He was taller than she expected, with an intense gaze softened by a small, curious smile. Hi, Ava, he said, stepping forward and extending a hand. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Ava shook his hand, her grip firm. Hi, Mr. Musk. I've been looking forward to meeting you too. Elon chuckled. Call me Elon. He turned to her parents, greeting them warmly before motioning for everyone to sit. As they settled into the chairs, Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. So, Ava, he began, his tone light but probing, how does it feel to be called the human Google? Ava shrugged. It's just a nickname. I don't think anyone can really know everything, but I like learning, and I like helping people understand things. Elon's smile widened. A good answer. Humility with a touch of ambition. I like that. Why do you want to meet me? Ava asked bluntly, her eyes locking onto his. Elon paused, studying her. Because I think you're special. And because I have questions, big questions, that I think only someone like you can help answer. Ava tilted her head. What kind of questions? Elon leaned back, his gaze drifting to the window. Questions about the future. About humanity, technology, and our place in the universe. But first, he turned back to her, his eyes sharp and playful. Let's see how sharp you really are. The assistants wheeled in a whiteboard covered with equations and diagrams. Elon picked up a marker and began writing furiously, filling the board with a mix of physics problems, logic puzzles, and hypothetical scenarios. Ava's parents exchanged nervous glances, but Ava's face lit up. She leaned forward, her mind already racing. Elon capped the marker and stepped back. All right, Ava, let's see what you've got. And with that, the first test began. The room fell silent as Ava stepped closer to the whiteboard, her small frame dwarfed by its towering presence. Elon stood to one side, arms crossed, observing her every move. Her parents sat on the edge of their seats, their anxiety practically radiating off them. Ava scanned the equations and puzzles, her brow furrowing slightly in concentration. The board was filled with challenges designed to stump even the brightest minds. Advanced physics equations, ethical dilemmas, and abstract logic problems. Elon hadn't held back. The first question was a classic thought experiment. You're on Mars, and your oxygen supply is failing. You have a limited amount of energy to either repair your oxygen generator or send a distress signal. Which do you prioritize and why? Ava smiled faintly. That's a trick question, she said confidently. Elon raised an eyebrow. Oh, you don't choose between the two, she explained. If you have limited energy, you calculate how much is needed to repair the generator and how much can be spared for a minimal distress signal. It's not an either-or scenario. It's about optimizing resources. Elon nodded slowly, impressed. Good. Let's move on. The next challenge was a math problem involving the trajectory of an object traveling through space. Elon had crafted it carefully, knowing it required both precision and creative thinking. Ava picked up the marker, her small hand barely wrapping around it, and began writing furiously. Her calculations filled the board as she worked through the variables. At one point, she paused, staring at the numbers. Then, with a confident nod, she made an adjustment. When she finished, Elon examined her work. "Why did you account for solar wind here?" he asked, pointing to one part of her solution. "Because you mentioned earlier that the object was in the inner solar system," Ava replied, her tone matter of fact. "Solar wind would create a small but significant force over time. Ignoring it would skew the trajectory." Elon chuckled softly. "Not bad. Most people miss that detail." The final problem on the board wasn't technical, it was philosophical. If artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence, how should society ensure it benefits humanity instead of harming it? Ava paused, tapping the marker against her chin. Her parents exchanged nervous glances. Finally, she spoke. "You don't control it. You guide it. AI isn't inherently good or bad. It's a reflection of the people who create it. The real question isn't about controlling AI. It's about making sure the people behind it prioritize empathy, fairness, and understanding. If we build AI to solve problems collaboratively, instead of competitively, it's more likely to help than harm." The room was silent for a moment. Elon's expression was unreadable, but there was a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "That's an excellent answer," he said finally. As the test concluded, Ava's parents visibly relaxed, though Sarah still looked worried. Elon sat back in his chair, regarding Ava thoughtfully. "You're brilliant, Ava," he said. "No doubt about it. But brilliance isn't just about solving problems. It's about asking the right questions. So let me ask you this. What do you want to do with your knowledge?" Ava hesitated for the first time, her youthful face serious. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I just know I want to help people. But I think the best way to help is to make sure knowledge is shared, not hidden." Elon smiled. A wise answer for someone so young. Before they left, Elon handed Ava a small notebook with his personal contact information. "Write down your questions," he said. "Every great mind has them. And when you're ready to ask the big ones, call me." Ava nodded, clutching the notebook like a treasure. As they left SpaceX headquarters, her parents couldn't contain their emotions. "You were amazing," Michael said, beaming with pride. Sarah knelt down, cupping Ava's face. "You okay, sweetheart?" Ava smiled. "I'm okay. That was fun." But as they drove away, Elon remained in the conference room, staring at the equations Ava had solved. Something about her answers lingered in his mind. Not just their accuracy, but the way she approached problems with a blend of logic and empathy. "She's more than a prodigy," he murmured to himself. "She's a visionary in the making." What neither Elon nor Ava knew was that this meeting was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge both of them in ways they could never have imagined. News of Ava's extraordinary encounter with Elon Musk spread like wildfire. It began as a quiet murmur within the SpaceX community, but soon reached the ears of journalists and social media influencers. Within days, headlines blared. 7-year-old Prodigy stuns Elon Musk in a test of genius. Meet Ava, the girl who outsmarted the world's greatest innovator. Michael and Sarah were unprepared for the media frenzy that followed. Reporters camped outside their home, eager to capture a glimpse of the child now being dubbed the human Google. Their mailbox overflowed with letters from schools, tech companies, and curious individuals. Invitations poured in, from TED Talks to science fairs, and even a feature request from a renowned magazine. Inside the house, Ava sat at the dining table, her face buried in a book on quantum mechanics. She barely noticed the chaos outside, but her parents were at their wits' end. "This is getting out of hand," Sarah said, peeking out the window at the growing crowd of reporters. "She's just a child. She needs space." Michael nodded, pacing the living room. "I'll call the school board again. Maybe they can help us manage this." But Ava looked up from her book, her expression calm. "I don't mind the questions," she said. "But why does everyone think this is such a big deal? I didn't do anything special." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sweetheart, you did something most people couldn't even dream of. That's why they're so fascinated." Ava tilted her head, considering this. "But I only answered questions. Isn't everyone capable of that if they learn enough?" Michael sighed. "Not quite, Ava. People see something unique in you, and they're curious about it. But we'll protect you, okay? You don't have to do anything you don't want to." Ava nodded, trusting her parents implicitly, but in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being seen as something she wasn't. Later that day, Elon Musk made a surprise statement during a press conference. "I'm often asked what it takes to be a genius," he began, his tone thoughtful. "And recently, I met someone who reminded me that genius isn't just about knowledge. It's about curiosity and perspective. Ava isn't just smart. She has a way of seeing the world that's refreshing and inspiring. I think we could all learn something from her." The room erupted in questions, but Elon raised a hand, silencing them. "She's a kid, though," he added firmly. "Let her be one. Give her space to grow without the weight of the world on her shoulders." The statement was widely praised, but it also added fuel to the fire. Now the world was even more intrigued by the girl who had captured Elon Musk's admiration. That evening, as the family tried to enjoy a quiet dinner, the phone rang. Michael answered, his face growing more serious with each word. When he hung up, he turned to Sarah. It was from Ava's school. They want to arrange for her to speak at an assembly about her experience with Elon. Sarah frowned. "She's not a show pony. Can't they just let her learn in peace?" Michael hesitated. "It's not just the school. Colleges are reaching out. They're offering her early admission, full scholarships to places like MIT and Stanford." Ava looked up from her plate, her fork hovering in midair. "But I don't want to go to college yet," she said softly. "I just want to keep learning on my own." Sarah placed a comforting hand on Ava's. "Then that's what you'll do, honey. We won't let anyone pressure you into something you're not ready for." As the family prepared for bed that night, Sarah found Ava sitting by the window, staring at the stars. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" she asked, sitting beside her. Ava pointed to the sky. "Do you think there's someone out there who's just like me? Someone who looks at the world differently?" Sarah smiled. "I think there's no one exactly like you, Ava, but I do think there are people who understand what it's like to feel different. And maybe one day, you'll meet them." Ava nodded, her mind already wandering to the endless possibilities. Meanwhile, in his office, Elon Musk scrolled through the flood of emails and messages he had received since his meeting with Ava. Among them was one that caught his eye, a proposal from a group of scientists developing a new initiative to mentor young prodigies. He leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "This could be interesting," he murmured. As he typed out his response, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that Ava's journey was just beginning, and that she might be the key to unlocking something far greater than anyone could imagine. Ava's life had shifted dramatically in just a few short weeks. The outside world buzzed with excitement about her, yet inside her home, the family did their best to shield her from the chaos. Michael and Sarah had declined most offers, letting Ava remain a child first and a prodigy second. But one afternoon, as Ava was sketching a diagram of a theoretical perpetual motion machine on her bedroom floor, an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. It wasn't from a school or a media outlet. This letter bore the distinct logo of Tesla and SpaceX, along with Elon Musk's signature at the bottom. Michael read the letter aloud as the family gathered around the dining table. "Dear Ava, you've inspired me and many others with your remarkable intelligence and curiosity. I believe your unique perspective could be invaluable in solving some of the world's biggest challenges. I'd like to formally invite you and your family to visit one of our SpaceX facilities. We have a project I think you might find fascinating." Looking forward to meeting you again. Warm regards, Elon Musk. Sarah's eyebrows knit together. Is this normal? Inviting a 7-year-old to consult on a project? Michael chuckled nervously. I don't think there's anything normal about this situation. Ava, however, seemed unfazed. What kind of project do you think it is? Maybe something about Mars? Or sustainable energy? Her parents exchanged a glance. It was clear Ava's curiosity was piqued, and they both knew how much this opportunity would mean to her. Do you want to go? Sarah asked gently. Ava nodded eagerly. Yes, but only if you both come with me. I don't want to go alone. Michael smiled. Of course we'll go with you. We wouldn't let you do this by yourself. A week later, the family arrived at the SpaceX facility in Hawthorne, California. The towering rocket prototypes and massive hangars left them awestruck. As they were escorted through the gates, Ava's eyes lit up with wonder. Elon Musk greeted them personally, his demeanor warm and approachable. Welcome, Ava, he said, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. I hope you're ready to see something extraordinary. Ava nodded, her voice steady despite her excitement. Yes, Mr. Musk, I'm ready. He led them through a series of corridors, explaining the history of the company and its mission to make life multiplanetary. But the tour wasn't the highlight. Eventually, they entered a sleek, high-tech lab filled with engineers, scientists, and prototypes of advanced machinery. On a central display screen was a rotating holographic image of a machine Ava had never seen before. This, Elon said, gesturing to the hologram, is our next big challenge. It's a quantum AI system designed to optimize life support systems for long-duration space travel. We call it Athena. Ava's eyes widened as she studied the projection. The intricate design, the layers of algorithms, everything about it was mesmerizing. What's the problem with it? She asked, her voice calm but focused. Elon smiled. Sharp question. The problem is that Athena isn't learning as efficiently as we hoped. It's struggling to handle the unpredictability of space environments. We've tried everything, but we're still hitting a wall. He paused, watching her closely. I thought maybe someone who sees the world differently might have a fresh perspective. No pressure, of course. Ava stepped closer to the display, tilting her head as she examined the hologram. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The family watched from the sidelines, unsure of what to expect. Ava was silent, her fingers hovering near the display as if she could touch the hologram. Finally, she spoke. It's trying to solve too many problems at once. You need to narrow its focus. Give it smaller tasks to master before it tackles the whole system. Elon blinked, surprised. That's actually a brilliant observation. We've been treating Athena like an adult when she's still just a child. One of the engineers stepped forward, typing rapidly on a nearby console. If we reconfigure the parameters as she suggested, we might see an improvement in real time. They watched as the hologram shifted, its patterns simplifying before gradually growing more complex in a structured manner. Within minutes, a notification flashed on the screen. Optimization successful. The room erupted in cheers. Engineers clapped, some shook their heads in disbelief, and Elon turned to Ava, his expression a mix of pride and admiration. You just solved something we've been struggling with for months, he said. How did you know? Ava shrugged modestly. I just thought about how I learn things. If I try to do too much at once, it doesn't work. But if I break it into steps, it's easier. That evening, as the family prepared to leave, Elon walked them to the car. Ava, he said, crouching to her level again, you have a gift. But remember, it's not just about solving problems. It's about using that gift to help others. Always stay curious, and don't let anyone make you feel like you have to be something you're not. Ava nodded solemnly. I won't. Thank you for letting me help today. As they drove away, Ava stared out the window, her mind buzzing with ideas. She wasn't sure what her future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She wanted to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making a difference. The moment news broke of Ava's visit to SpaceX and her contribution to the Athena project, the media descended like a storm. Headlines like, 7-year-old genius solves SpaceX's quantum AI problem, and Meet the Human Google. Ava changes the future of space travel spread like wildfire. Reporters camped outside the family's modest suburban home, vying for quotes or even a glimpse of Ava. Some praised her brilliance, while others questioned if a child should be involved in such high-stakes work. Social media exploded, with hashtags like #HumanGoogle and #AvaTheProdigy trending worldwide. Inside the Bennett home, things were far less glamorous. The once quiet household was now filled with the constant buzz of phones ringing, emails pouring in, and unsolicited visitors knocking on the door. Michael and Sarah did their best to protect Ava from the chaos, but it was impossible to shield her completely. One evening, as the family sat down for dinner, Michael sighed and rubbed his temples. "We need to figure out how to manage this. It's getting out of hand." "I know," Sarah replied, her voice weary. "But what can we do? Everyone wants a piece of Ava." Ava looked up from her plate, her expression conflicted. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted to help Mr. Musk." Sarah reached over to squeeze her daughter's hand. "None of this is your fault, sweetheart. But we need to make sure you're okay through all of this. How are you feeling?" Ava hesitated, then shrugged. "I don't know. It's kind of cool that people think I'm smart, but it's also scary. I don't like strangers taking pictures of me." The next day, the family had a meeting with a lawyer and a public relations specialist who had been recommended by Elon Musk himself. "First and foremost," the lawyer said, "you have the right to privacy. We can put out a statement asking for space and set boundaries with the media." The PR specialist nodded. "We can also help you manage Ava's public image. If you choose, we can redirect the narrative to focus on her ideas rather than her age or personal life." Michael and Sarah exchanged glances. "We want Ava to have as normal a childhood as possible," Michael said firmly. "No exploitation, no reality TV offers. Just let her be a kid." The PR specialist smiled. "That's absolutely doable. We'll handle the press and work on filtering out unnecessary distractions." Despite their best efforts, Ava could feel the weight of the attention pressing down on her. At school, classmates whispered behind her back. Some treated her like a celebrity, while others acted resentful, calling her a know-it-all. Her closest friend, Emily, tried to cheer her up during lunch. "I think it's amazing what you did," she said. "Not everyone can say they helped Elon Musk." "But that's the problem," Ava replied, poking at her sandwich. "I don't want to be just the girl who helped Elon Musk. What if that's all people see me as?" Emily tilted her head thoughtfully. "Then show them there's more to you. You're not just smart, you're funny and nice too. People will see that if you let them." Ava smiled faintly. "Thanks, Emily." Later that week, Elon Musk called to check in. "Hey, Ava," his voice crackled through the speakerphone. "How are you holding up?" "Okay, I guess," Ava said. "But it's weird. Everyone's acting like I'm some kind of superhero, and I'm not. I'm just me." Elon chuckled. "That's the price of genius, I'm afraid. But remember, you get to decide how you use your talents. Don't let the noise distract you from what matters most." "What does matter most?" Ava asked curiously. "That's for you to figure out," Elon replied. "But here's a hint. It usually involves helping people in ways only you can." That night, as Ava lay in bed, her mind churned with thoughts. She didn't ask for fame, but it was here now. Could she use it for something meaningful? Before drifting off to sleep, she made a silent promise to herself. She wouldn't let the attention define her. Instead, she would focus on what she loved most: learning, solving problems, and making the world a better place. A week after Ava's promise to herself, she received a letter. It wasn't an ordinary letter. It was embossed with gold trim and marked with the SpaceX logo. Ava tore it open eagerly. The letter read, "Dear Ava Bennett, we are thrilled to invite you and your family to SpaceX headquarters for an exclusive presentation of the Athena project prototype. Your contributions have been invaluable, and we would love for you to see the next stage of development. Additionally, Elon Musk would like to personally introduce you to some of the brightest minds working on our mission to Mars. We hope this opportunity will inspire you to continue exploring your extraordinary potential. Sincerely, the SpaceX team." Ava's eyes lit up as she read the letter aloud to her parents. "Wow," Michael said, whistling softly. "An invitation straight from SpaceX. That's incredible. Sarah, though proud, looked hesitant. It sounds amazing, but do we need to think about the media frenzy this might cause? You're just starting to adjust to everything. Ava looked between her parents, her excitement dimming slightly. I understand if it's too much, but this is a chance to see Athena come to life. I really want to go. Michael nodded thoughtfully. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We'll go, but we'll work with the PR team to keep things low-key. Agreed? Sarah sighed but smiled. Agreed. Let's make it happen. The following week, the family boarded a plane to California. SpaceX had arranged everything, from first-class seats to a chauffeured car waiting at the airport. As the car approached the SpaceX campus, Ava pressed her face against the window. The sprawling complex looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, with sleek, futuristic buildings and towering rocket models. Elon Musk himself was waiting at the entrance to greet them. "Welcome back, Ava," he said, grinning. "And welcome to the Bennett family. It's an honor to have you here." "Thank you, Mr. Musk," Ava said, her voice brimming with excitement. "I've been counting down the days to see Athena again." Elon chuckled. "You're about to see much more than that. Follow me." The group was led to a secure lab where a group of engineers and scientists were gathered around a sleek, glowing console. The lead engineer, Dr. Elena Ramirez, stepped forward and shook Ava's hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person, Ava," Dr. Ramirez said. "Your algorithm was the missing piece we needed to get the prototype operational. Let me show you what we've accomplished." With a flourish, she activated the console. A holographic display lit up, showing a 3D model of the Athena AI system. "This," Dr. Ramirez explained, "is the future of space exploration. Thanks to your work, Athena can now analyze and solve problems in real time, even in the most unpredictable conditions." Ava's eyes widened as she watched the hologram demonstrate various scenarios, from navigating asteroid fields to repairing damaged spacecraft autonomously. "It's beautiful," Ava whispered. After the presentation, Elon introduced Ava to the rest of the SpaceX team. Each person she met seemed more brilliant than the last, but they all treated her as an equal, asking her thoughts on their work and listening intently to her ideas. One engineer even joked, "Careful, Elon. At this rate, Ava might take your job." Elon laughed. "She's welcome to it. Just give me a heads up so I can start looking for a new gig." The room erupted in laughter, but Ava felt a new sense of belonging. For the first time, she realized that her age didn't matter here. Only her ideas did. Later, Elon invited Ava to his office for a private chat. "I wanted to thank you personally, Ava," he said, sitting across from her. "What you've done here isn't just about solving an algorithm. You've inspired everyone at SpaceX, including me." Ava blushed. "I just wanted to help. But now I feel like there's so much more I can do." "There is," Elon said, leaning forward. "And I want you to think big, bigger than you've ever thought before. What's your ultimate dream, Ava? If there were no limits, what would you want to achieve?" Ava thought for a moment, her brow furrowed. Then she looked up, her eyes shining with determination. "I want to use science to help people. Not just astronauts or engineers, but everyone. I want to make the world a better place." Elon smiled. "Then that's what you'll do. And SpaceX will support you every step of the way." As they left the office, Ava felt a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just a child genius or a human Google. She was someone who could make a real difference. And this was only the beginning. Word of Ava's visit to SpaceX didn't stay under wraps for long. Despite the Bennett family's best efforts to keep things low-key, a journalist managed to snap a photo of Ava standing beside Elon Musk in front of the SpaceX headquarters. The image went viral within hours. Headlines flooded news sites and social media. "The human Google meets Elon Musk. 7-year-old genius changing the future of space exploration." Child prodigy Ava Bennett and her groundbreaking role at SpaceX. At first, Ava didn't notice the commotion. She was too engrossed in replaying the events of the day in her mind, especially her conversation with Elon. But by the next morning, her world felt like it had turned upside down. When Ava opened her laptop, she was bombarded with notifications. Her email inbox was overflowing with interview requests, offers for endorsements, and invitations to conferences. Even her social media, which she rarely used, was flooded with messages from strangers praising her brilliance or criticizing her for being too young to be taken seriously. "Mom, Dad," Ava called out, her voice shaking. "Why are people saying such mean things about me online? I didn't do anything wrong." Michael immediately stepped in, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Ava, you're an incredible person, and sometimes that makes people jealous or skeptical, but their opinions don't define you." Sarah nodded, pulling Ava into a hug. "We'll handle this together, sweetheart. You don't have to face it alone." That afternoon, Ava received an unexpected call. It was Elon Musk. "Ava," he said warmly, "I wanted to check in. The media can be overwhelming, especially when you're as extraordinary as you are. Are you holding up okay?" Ava hesitated before answering. "I'm trying, but it's hard. I just want to focus on learning and helping, not all this attention." Elon's voice softened. "I know how you feel. I've dealt with the same thing my whole life. The trick is to focus on the people and goals that truly matter. Let the noise fade into the background." Ava felt a flicker of hope. "Do you ever get used to it?" Elon chuckled. "Not really, but you get better at ignoring it. And trust me, the work you're doing is worth it. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Inspired by Elon's words, Ava decided to take control of her narrative. With her parents' help, she recorded a short video to address the public directly. In the video, she said, "Hi, everyone. My name is Ava Bennett, and I'm just a kid who loves learning and solving problems. I'm grateful to be working with amazing people at SpaceX, but I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I just want to make the world better, one idea at a time. Thank you for your support, and let's focus on what really matters: innovation, curiosity, and kindness." The video went viral, not because it was dramatic, but because it was heartfelt. Millions of people, including prominent scientists, educators, and even celebrities, rallied behind Ava, praising her courage and humility. One of the most surprising responses came from Dr. Emily Carter, a renowned physicist and outspoken advocate for women in STEM. She reached out to Ava with a personal letter. "You are an inspiration, not just to young girls, but to all of us who believe in the power of knowledge and perseverance. The path you've chosen isn't easy, but it's incredibly important. If you ever need guidance or just someone to talk to, I'm here for you. Warm regards, Dr. Emily Carter." Ava was thrilled. She wrote back immediately, thanking Dr. Carter and asking her questions about her work. This marked the beginning of a meaningful mentorship that would shape Ava's future. As the media buzz began to die down, Ava felt stronger and more focused than ever. She realized that being in the spotlight was a small price to pay for the chance to make a difference. That evening, as she sat by her window, staring up at the stars, she made herself a promise. "No matter how tough it gets, I'll keep pushing forward, because there's so much left to discover, and I'm just getting started." The excitement of Ava's newfound partnership with SpaceX was quickly replaced by a daunting reality. Her first project? Elon Musk invited Ava to work on a team brainstorming solutions for one of SpaceX's most significant hurdles, improving the efficiency of their Starship's propulsion system. Ava sat in a sleek, glass-walled conference room surrounded by some of the most brilliant engineers and scientists in the world. Despite their initial skepticism, her viral video and Elon's endorsement had earned her a seat at the table. Still, Ava felt the weight of the room's unspoken doubts. Elon kicked off the meeting with his characteristic enthusiasm. "All right, team, here's the challenge. To make Starship viable for interplanetary travel, we need to boost fuel efficiency by at least 20% without compromising payload capacity. Ideas?" The room buzzed with murmurs as seasoned engineers began presenting complex equations and technical proposals. Ava listened intently, scribbling notes and absorbing every detail like a sponge. When Elon finally turned to her, she hesitated for a moment, then spoke up. "What if we use AI to optimize the nozzle expansion ratio in real time? We could adapt the exhaust flow based on altitude and atmospheric pressure to reduce energy waste." The room fell silent. Some engineers exchanged skeptical glances, but Elon's eyes lit up. "That's an interesting idea, Ava," he said. "Adaptive nozzles have been theorized, but no one's figured out how to make them work efficiently. Do you think you can come up with a prototype model? Ava nodded, her heart racing. I'd like to try. Back at home, Ava transformed the living room into her makeshift lab. She surrounded herself with stacks of textbooks, diagrams, and her trusty laptop. Her parents supported her in every way they could. Sarah made sure she ate balanced meals, while Michael helped her source materials. But not everyone believed in her. Online forums were abuzz with debates about whether a 7-year-old could contribute anything meaningful to such an advanced project. Ava tried to ignore the negativity, but late at night, when the house was quiet, their words crept into her thoughts. What if they're right? She whispered to herself one evening. What if I'm just a kid playing pretend? She thought about Elon's advice and took a deep breath. Focus on what matters, she repeated, picking up her pencil again. After days of research and countless sketches, Ava finally had an idea that seemed promising. Using a combination of flexible materials and AI algorithms, she theorized a nozzle design that could shift its shape based on external conditions. She presented her concept to Elon and the team during a virtual meeting. This design uses memory alloys for flexibility and an AI system to adjust the nozzle's curvature in real time, she explained, her voice steady despite her nerves. One of the senior engineers, a stern man named Dr. Harris, raised an eyebrow. It's an ambitious idea, but where's the data to back it up? Ava was ready. She pulled up a detailed simulation she had run using open-source software, showing how her design could potentially save 22% of fuel during a test flight. The room erupted in discussion. While not everyone was convinced, Elon leaned forward, smiling. Let's build a small-scale prototype. Ava, you've earned this chance. Building the prototype wasn't easy. Ava worked closely with a group of junior engineers who were more open to her ideas. Together, they 3D printed components, tested various alloys, and debugged the AI software. The first test was a disaster. The nozzle warped under heat, rendering it useless. Ava felt a lump form in her throat as she watched the failed test play out. Dr. Harris shook his head. This is why we leave engineering to the experts. Ava clenched her fists, but refused to let the setback defeat her. She spent the next night tweaking the design, adding heat-resistant coatings and refining the AI parameters. On the second test, something incredible happened. As the engine roared to life, the nozzle adjusted itself perfectly, maintaining optimal efficiency throughout the simulated flight. The room erupted into applause, and even Dr. Harris managed a nod of approval. Elon turned to Ava with a grin. Congratulations, Ava. You've just taken us one step closer to Mars. That evening, as Ava walked out of the SpaceX lab, she felt a sense of pride she'd never experienced before. She had faced doubts, failure, and immense pressure, but she had also proven, to herself and the world, that she belonged. As she looked up at the stars, Ava smiled. This is just the beginning. The success of Ava's propulsion system prototype made waves not just within SpaceX, but across the entire scientific community. News outlets ran stories about the 7-year-old Prodigy, and social media buzzed with disbelief and admiration. But not all the attention was positive. While some lauded her brilliance, others questioned her ability to maintain the momentum. Can a child really revolutionize space technology? One famous scientist tweeted. This is nothing more than a publicity stunt. Ava tried to ignore the criticism, but it stung. She had always been confident in her abilities, but the constant scrutiny began to wear on her. Late one evening, after a long day at the lab, she sat down at her desk, the weight of the world on her shoulders. As Ava stared at her computer screen, lost in thought, a sudden knock on her door interrupted her. "Hey, kid," a voice called out from behind it. She turned around, surprised to see Elon Musk standing there. The last time they'd spoken, he had been busy with a new SpaceX launch, and their interactions had mostly been virtual. "Elon?" Ava asked, her voice tentative. Elon smiled. "Got a minute?" Ava gestured to the chair across from her, and Elon sat down, looking at her with a mix of concern and admiration. "You've been quiet lately. What's on your mind?" Ava hesitated, unsure whether to voice her insecurities. But with Elon sitting across from her, she felt she could be honest. "I don't know if I can do this, Elon," she admitted. "Everyone's saying I'm just a kid, and maybe they're right. Maybe this is too big for me. Elon's face softened, and he leaned forward. Ava, I've been in your shoes before. People doubted me too, told me I couldn't do things, told me I was crazy for thinking I could get to Mars, or even make electric cars mainstream. But I didn't listen to them. I listened to my own ideas and kept pushing forward. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. And you know what? You've already done something amazing. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Ava looked at him, surprised by how much his words resonated with her. It wasn't just the technical success that mattered. It was the confidence to keep moving forward, even in the face of doubt. Elon's visit wasn't just a pep talk. He had an idea. You know, Ava, he began, one of the things I've learned over the years is that real innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when you find people who challenge you, support you, and push you to think bigger. Ava nodded slowly. I think it's time you met someone who can take your ideas to the next level, Elon said. Someone who's been where you are, someone who understands the pressure and the challenge, but has also navigated it for years. His name's Alex, and he's a rocket scientist. I think the two of you could make an incredible team. The next morning, Ava was introduced to Alex, a young but seasoned aerospace engineer with a reputation for pushing the boundaries of what was possible. He was in his late 20s, with sharp features and an intense gaze. Alex greeted her with a handshake that was firm but friendly. So, you're the famous Ava, he said with a smile. I've heard a lot about you. I'm excited to see what we can accomplish together. Ava felt a bit intimidated by Alex's calm confidence, but she quickly realized that he wasn't here to belittle her or question her ideas. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in her perspective. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Ava formed an unexpected partnership. While Ava still had the final say in the designs, Alex helped her navigate the complexities of propulsion systems and material science. He didn't just provide solutions, he asked questions that challenged her, making her think deeper and wider. At first, their dynamic was a bit rocky. Ava was used to being the one who figured everything out on her own, but Alex's experience was invaluable. They spent late nights in the lab, fine-tuning their models, tweaking their AI algorithms, and improving the propulsion system. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Alex would sometimes push Ava too hard, urging her to think beyond what she thought was possible. Ava, in turn, would challenge his ideas, showing him fresh perspectives that no one else had considered. But slowly, they began to complement each other in ways that neither had expected. One day, after hours of exhausting work, Ava finally had an epiphany. She stood up, eyes wide with realization, and looked at Alex. I think I've got it, she said, her voice filled with excitement. Alex raised an eyebrow. Got what? I think I've figured out how to make the propulsion system even more efficient, Ava explained. By using a hybrid design, we can leverage both traditional fuel and ion propulsion systems. The two can work together to maximize fuel efficiency without sacrificing speed. Alex's eyes lit up. That's brilliant, Ava. I never would have thought of that. Ava's collaboration with Alex marked the beginning of something greater. Together, they designed a new propulsion system that, if successfully tested, could change the future of space travel. Elon was impressed by their work, and SpaceX's leadership team was eager to see the results. As Ava looked at their final blueprint, she realized how far she'd come. Just a few months ago, she had been a nervous, uncertain child, doubting whether she belonged in the world of adult engineers and scientists. Now, she stood on the edge of something monumental, surrounded by people who believed in her, pushing her to achieve even more. She smiled. This is just the beginning. The final prototype of the hybrid propulsion system was ready. After months of late nights, endless calculations, and countless hours spent in the lab, Ava, Elon, and Alex were finally prepared for the test that could push the boundaries of space travel. The atmosphere at SpaceX headquarters was electric, charged with anticipation. Ava stood before the prototype, now securely housed in the testing facility. It was a sleek, compact device, its surface a blend of cutting-edge materials that shimmered under the bright lights. Her heart pounded as she glanced around the room. Engineers and experts from various fields filled the space, watching her every move. Elon walked up beside her, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a rare seriousness. You've come a long way, Ava, he said, giving her a nod of approval. She looked at him, her throat tight. I've never been more nervous in my life. You should be. This is big. Elon's voice was steady, but Ava could hear the underlying tension. The countdown began. Ava felt every second of it, the rush of adrenaline, the pressure building as they neared the moment of truth. The air in the room grew thick with anticipation, and even the engineers around her seemed to hold their breath. Ava's eyes were fixed on the screen in front of her, where the readings were coming in. She could see Alex standing nearby, his arms crossed, watching the data with rapt attention. The numbers were climbing steadily, and Ava's fingers gripped the edge of the control panel, fighting to keep her composure. All systems go, Alex said, breaking the tense silence. Ava pressed the final button, initiating the test sequence. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The prototype hummed to life, its engines softly vibrating as it powered up. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, the propulsion system roared to life, pushing the test module forward with remarkable speed. Everything seemed perfect, but then, without warning, the system stuttered. The propulsion module jerked violently, and a warning signal blared through the room. "Shut it down," Elon shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. Ava's heart skipped a beat. She immediately rushed to the control panel, trying to override the malfunction, but the systems wouldn't respond. Panic began to set in as the readings on the screen spiked. "Damn it," Alex muttered, moving toward the system's diagnostics. "This shouldn't be happening." Ava's mind raced. The hybrid propulsion system had worked flawlessly in simulations. They had tested each component thoroughly, and yet now it was failing in front of them. The pressure was mounting, and she could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her. The hum of the system grew louder as the module continued to sputter. Ava's hands shook as she tried to assess the problem. Was it a minor glitch? Or had she miscalculated something more significant? What went wrong? Elon asked, his voice now calm but tinged with concern. "I don't know," Ava replied, her voice tight. "It should be working. I double-checked everything." "Check the power coupling," Alex suggested, his voice steady. Ava nodded and frantically scanned the diagnostic panel. Her eyes locked onto one of the readings. There was a fault in the power coupling, a small but critical component. It wasn't a huge issue, but it was enough to disrupt the system's performance. She took a deep breath. "I can fix this," she said, determination rising in her chest. With no time to waste, Ava dove into the system's diagnostics, her fingers flying over the controls. She quickly isolated the faulty component and began recalibrating the power coupling. Every second counted now. If she didn't fix it fast, the test would be a failure, and their hard work would be for nothing. The room held its breath as Ava worked, her mind focused on nothing but the task at hand. The noise of the malfunction grew louder for a moment, and then, with a sudden shift, the propulsion system stabilized. Ava looked up, her heart racing. "I think it's working now." With the system back online, the propulsion module surged forward again. This time, the movement was smooth, controlled, and consistent. The readings on the screen were steady, and the module accelerated without hesitation. "Yes," Ava breathed, her face lighting up with relief and triumph. Alex grinned. "You did it." Elon stepped forward, a smile spreading across his face. "That's the Ava I know. You didn't back down when things got tough." Ava's heart swelled with pride. This moment, this victory, was proof that she could do it. She wasn't just a 7-year-old prodigy. She was a force to be reckoned with. The testing team erupted into applause. Ava felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, but also an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. She had faced the challenge head-on, and she had succeeded. As the celebration calmed down, Elon approached her once again. "That was impressive," he said, his tone warm but measured. "This is just the beginning. There's a long road ahead of us, but today, you've proven something to all of us." Ava nodded, her thoughts already racing ahead. There was still so much to be done, so many questions to answer, but she was ready. "Thanks, Elon," she said, her voice firm. "But this is just the first step. I'm not stopping here." Ava sat in her private office, the weight of her achievement settling in. The propulsion system had passed its first test, but that was just the beginning. The world was watching, and expectations were sky high. There was still much to be done before the system could be rolled out for actual space missions. But as she gazed out the window, she couldn't help but feel the excitement of what was to come. Elon Musk had promised her that they would tackle whatever came next, together. But she knew this was no ordinary project. The stakes were too high, the eyes of the world were on them, and as much as she tried to ignore it, there were those who wouldn't be too pleased with her breakthrough. The question that lingered in her mind now was, who was out to stop her? Word of Ava's successful test spread like wildfire. The media, eager to capitalize on the young Prodigy's story, inundated her with interviews and requests. But not everyone was cheering for her success. Among the crowd of admirers, there were whispers of doubt and skepticism. Late one evening, as Ava reviewed the test results in her office, she received an encrypted email. The sender was anonymous, but the message was chilling. You think you're changing the world, but you're playing into something much darker. Trust no one. She stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, but no response came to her. Was it a warning? A threat? Or just an elaborate prank from someone who couldn't handle the idea of a 7-year-old genius outperforming the best of the best? She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Could there be forces out there working against her? There were so many powerful players in the tech and aerospace industries who had much to lose if Ava's breakthrough became the norm. The next morning, Ava walked into SpaceX's headquarters, where Elon was already waiting for her. His usual confident posture was now replaced by a more serious demeanor. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Have you seen the email?" Ava nodded. "I don't know what to think. It could be nothing, but it feels like a warning." Elon's face darkened. "It's more than that. I've been getting reports that someone is actively trying to sabotage our progress. Whoever is behind this isn't playing games." "Who could it be?" Ava asked, feeling a chill crawl up her spine. "It's hard to say, but there's a lot of power at stake here," Elon replied. "People don't like it when someone like you, someone so young, challenges the status quo." Later that day, as Ava and Elon were discussing the next phase of the project, a mysterious figure entered the building. A man dressed in a dark suit, his face hidden behind dark sunglasses, walked straight toward them. There was something unsettling about him, like he didn't belong in this space. Elon stood up immediately, his body tense. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer at first. Instead, he pulled out a small device, placing it on the table between them. It was sleek, unfamiliar, and clearly advanced. "You need to stop, Musk," the man said in a cold, monotone voice. "And take the girl with you. She's too much of a risk." Ava's eyes narrowed. She could feel the weight of his words, the silent threat beneath them. This wasn't some random encounter. Whoever this man was, he knew exactly what he was doing. "You're threatening us?" Elon's voice was cold, calculated. The man simply nodded. "You've been warned. Stay out of matters you don't understand." With that, the man turned and walked out of the room, disappearing as quickly as he had arrived. That night, Ava couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She felt vulnerable, exposed in ways she never had before. Despite the progress she had made, the sense of danger seemed to grow with each passing hour. She confided in Alex the next morning. He, too, was troubled by the developments but had no concrete answers. However, they both knew one thing. They couldn't stop now. "Elon's right," Ava said, her voice firm. "I won't back down. Not now. We've come too far." Alex looked at her, a mix of admiration and concern in his eyes. "You're right, but we need to be careful. There's something bigger at play here. We're not just talking about an invention anymore. We're talking about power, control, and people who will stop at nothing to protect their interests." Elon gathered a small, trusted team to begin investigating the source of the threats. As they dug deeper, they discovered a network of powerful industry figures who had been actively trying to suppress innovation that could disrupt the status quo. The propulsion system wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a revolution. And revolutions never came without resistance. "Who are we dealing with?" Ava asked, her voice steady but filled with the urgency of the situation. "We don't know yet," Elon replied. but I have a feeling we're about to find out. As Ava returned to the drawing board, working late into the night with Elon and Alex, her resolve only grew stronger. She had faced challenges before, but this was different. Now, she wasn't just fighting for science. She was fighting for her right to be heard, for the future she believed in, and for the chance to change the world. Ava's fingers hovered over the keyboard as she stared at the screen in front of her. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the cryptic warning she'd received. The unsettling meeting with the mysterious man still haunted her. She had always known that innovation, especially in the field she was breaking into, would invite competition and skepticism. But this was different. This was something darker, something far more dangerous. Alex sat next to her, his eyes scanning the data for the propulsion system's next test. But even he couldn't shake the feeling that something ominous was approaching. He hadn't spoken of it, but Ava could sense it. They were running out of time. "You still thinking about the threat?" Alex finally asked, breaking the silence. Ava nodded, her expression hardening. "We can't ignore it. Whoever is behind this wants us to stop. But I'm not backing down. Not now." Elon had been clear. He'd warned Ava that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But no one, not even him, had anticipated just how high the stakes were. There were those who would stop at nothing to protect their own power and influence, and the creation of Ava's propulsion system was a direct threat to that. They had just begun to scratch the surface of a massive conspiracy. 2 days later, Ava was in her lab, finalizing some calculations for the propulsion system's next test. Her mind was sharp, but there was an unsettling weight in the air. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something was wrong. Without warning, the alarm systems in the lab blared. Red lights flashed as an emergency protocol took over the computer systems. Ava's heart skipped a beat. "Alex," she called out, her voice urgent. "Check the systems." Alex rushed over to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys. His face paled as the data on the screen shifted unexpectedly. This isn't possible," he murmured, his voice a mix of disbelief and fear. Ava's eyes widened as she looked over his shoulder. The propulsion system's core algorithms had been altered, deliberately corrupted. The test that they had scheduled for the next day was sabotaged, potentially causing catastrophic failure. Someone had gained access to their systems, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Who could have done this? Ava whispered, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "There's no way this was a mistake," Alex said, his voice tense. "This was deliberate." Ava clenched her fists. The idea that someone had infiltrated their system was terrifying. This wasn't just a rival trying to steal their work. It was a direct attempt to destroy everything they had worked for. Elon arrived at the lab soon after the breach was discovered. His face was grim, his mind already racing with possible solutions. He was a master at handling crises, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with a barely contained fury. "I don't know," Ava said, "but we've got to fix it. The test tomorrow is critical. If we can't get the system back on track, we might lose everything." Elon's eyes darkened as he surveyed the damage. "We're not going to let that happen. But whoever did this is playing a much larger game than we are. We need to be careful." Ava nodded, determination setting in. "I'm not backing down. We'll fix it, and we'll prove them wrong." As Ava and her team worked tirelessly to repair the damage to the system, Elon's team dug into their security protocols, searching for any trace of the intruder. It wasn't long before they discovered something troubling. The breach had been traced back to a shadowy network of insiders, individuals with vast resources and influence. Ava's heart sank as Elon shared the news. "This isn't just some random act of sabotage," Elon said. "We're dealing with something far bigger. These people have access to everything." Ava's thoughts raced. Who are they? What do they want? Elon shook his head, his expression hardening. "I don't know yet, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." The sense of urgency intensified. Ava had already put so much of herself into this project, and now, not only was her breakthrough at risk, but so was her safety. And yet, she knew there was no turning back. She couldn't let these anonymous forces win. The next few days were a blur of frantic work, sleepless nights, and tense discussions. Ava, Elon, and Alex all knew they had to act fast, but they couldn't do it alone. They needed help from the outside, and they needed it quickly. "I've reached out to a few trusted people," Elon said during one of their late-night meetings. "People who owe me a favor. We're going to get to the bottom of this." But even with all their resources, they were up against something formidable. It was clear that whoever was pulling the strings had a far-reaching influence, possibly even on a global scale. Ava could feel the weight of the conspiracy bearing down on them, but she refused to let fear take hold. "If we don't do something now," she said, "we may not get another chance." Alex looked at her, a mixture of admiration and concern in his eyes. "Are you sure you're ready for this? We're not just up against a few rivals anymore. This is much bigger." "I've never been more ready," Ava said, her voice filled with resolve. "This is our moment." As the days passed, Ava and her team made progress on restoring the corrupted systems. But the more they uncovered, the more they realized the scale of the opposition they were facing. The mysterious forces behind the sabotage weren't just targeting Ava. They were targeting everything she stood for: progress, innovation, and the future. The clock was ticking. Every moment they spent repairing the damage brought them closer to the next move of their unseen enemies. Ava knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. There was no telling what was coming next. The final test of the propulsion system was fast approaching, and with it, the question loomed large. Would Ava and her team succeed in the face of overwhelming opposition, or would they fall victim to the forces working against them? The days since the sabotage had been a whirlwind of stress, sleepless nights, and frantic attempts to restore the propulsion system. Ava had kept her eyes locked on the goal: to finish the system, run the tests, and prove the naysayers wrong. But in the back of her mind, there was always that nagging question: who was behind all of this? The answers didn't come easy. It was just past midnight when Ava, Alex, and Elon sat in the lab, poring over lines of code. The lights above buzzed faintly, and the hum of the computers was the only sound in the otherwise quiet room. It felt as if the entire weight of the world rested on their shoulders. "We're close," Alex muttered, his fingers flying across the keyboard, eyes scanning every line of code. "But whoever did this knew exactly how to mess with us." "I agree," Elon said, his voice low. "This wasn't just about sabotaging the propulsion system. They were trying to send a message." Ava glanced at Elon, her brow furrowed in thought. "But what message? What do they want from us?" Elon stood up, pacing in the small, cramped lab. His face was tense, but his voice remained calm. "They want control. They want to keep us from succeeding. And whoever is behind this, they're not just some hackers. This goes higher. Much higher." Ava shook her head in disbelief. "Are we really up against a global network of power players?" "It looks like it," Elon replied. "And we can't afford to sit back anymore. We need to take the offensive." As they worked through the night, a phone call interrupted the intensity of the moment. Ava hesitated before answering. She wasn't expecting any calls at this hour, especially not when they were racing against time to fix the damage. "Hello," she answered cautiously. The voice on the other end was low, but unmistakable. "Ava, it's Marcus." "Marcus?" Ava's heart skipped a beat. Marcus was an old colleague from her time in aerospace engineering. They had worked together years ago before she'd gone on her own path to innovate in the propulsion field. She hadn't spoken to him in over a year. "Marcus? What's going on? Why are you calling me now?" Ava asked, her mind racing. Was he somehow connected to the sabotage? "I've been keeping an eye on your work," Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I know you've been having issues with your systems. Someone's trying to steal your technology." Ava's chest tightened. "What do you mean? Who's behind it?" "I can't say much over the phone, but I know who's pulling the strings," Marcus said, lowering his voice. "If you want to survive this, you need to trust me. I can help you take them down." Ava felt a shiver run down her spine. Marcus had always been brilliant, but he'd always played things close to the chest. Now, he was offering his help, but at what cost? After a long discussion with Elon and Alex, Ava agreed to meet Marcus the next day. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were getting closer to something far more dangerous than they had realized. Every new revelation made it clear that they were involved in something much bigger than just a technological race. They were now in the middle of a high-stakes battle between forces that could change the course of history. The next morning, Ava and Elon met Marcus at a nondescript cafe just outside the city. As they sat down, Marcus wasted no time. "It's not just a sabotage, Ava," Marcus said, leaning in. "You're in the middle of a global conspiracy. The people behind this? They want to control the future of energy and space. Your propulsion system is a direct threat to their entire empire." Ava was stunned. But who would do something like that? Why us? Marcus took a deep breath. It's a network. These people, business leaders, politicians, military figures, they don't want new technology to disrupt the status quo. Your breakthrough could make the old energy systems obsolete, and they won't let that happen without a fight. Elon leaned forward, his expression hardened. "So, this is about more than just competition. This is about power. They'll stop at nothing to silence us." Marcus nodded grimly. "Exactly. And they're already preparing their next move." Ava felt the weight of the situation settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just about innovation anymore. This was a fight for survival. "We need to act fast," Elon said. "Whatever they have planned next, we can't wait for it to hit us. We have to stay one step ahead." Marcus stood up and handed Ava a small, encrypted flash drive. "This contains everything I've been able to dig up. It's not much, but it's enough to make them sweat." Ava took the drive, her fingers trembling slightly. She had no idea what they were getting themselves into, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. As they left the cafe, Ava felt a sense of dread wash over her. She had always dreamed of changing the world with her technology, but now it seemed as if the forces working against her were far greater than she had ever imagined. The game had changed, and they were all in it whether they liked it or not. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Ava, Elon, and Alex sifted through the data on the flash drive, piecing together fragments of information that pointed to a much larger operation. The enemies they were facing weren't just business moguls. They had deep connections to governments, military contractors, and shadowy organizations that operated in the dark corners of the world. Ava felt the weight of the realization hit her hard. They weren't just battling for the future of energy and space. They were battling for the future of humanity itself. As the clock ticked down to their next test, Ava knew that the true challenge wasn't just perfecting her propulsion system. It was surviving long enough to see her dream become a reality. The tension in the air was palpable as Ava, Elon, and Alex sat in the lab, staring at the encrypted files from Marcus's flash drive. The information was explosive. It wasn't just sabotage. They were up against a network of people with enough power to bring entire countries to their knees. Elon paced the room, his mind clearly racing. "We need to get ahead of this. If we don't act fast, we might be too late." Ava swallowed, trying to steady her nerves. "We need more than just data. We need to expose them. To everyone." Alex glanced at her. "Exposing them means risking everything. Our lives, the project, everything we've worked for. Are we ready for that?" Ava knew Alex was right. This wasn't just about one failed experiment or a ruined reputation. If they went public with the information they had, there would be no going back. But she also knew that staying quiet meant letting the people behind the conspiracy win. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice firm. "We can't let them control the future. We need to make sure everyone knows what's going on." Elon stopped pacing and turned to Ava and Alex. "We need leverage. If we want to make a real impact, we need more than just information. We need their secrets, the kind of secrets that could ruin them." Ava's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes," Elon replied. "We go after the core of their operations. We take them down, one by one." Alex's face hardened. "It's risky. These people aren't just businessmen. They have political influence, military connections. We could end up being labeled as enemies of the state. But if we do nothing," Ava said, "we're already their enemies." The decision was made. They would gather the intel they needed and use it to expose the conspiracy. But first, they had to figure out who was involved and where to strike. As the team worked late into the night, a knock at the door interrupted their focus. Ava looked up, her heart racing. No one outside their inner circle knew where they were working. Elon moved toward the door cautiously, his eyes narrowing. He opened it to reveal a tall figure standing in the doorway, a man with an unmistakable air of authority. "Mr. Musk," the man said, his voice smooth, almost cold. "We need to talk." Elon stiffened but didn't hesitate. "Who are you?" The man smiled slightly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Nathaniel Blackwell. I'm here to offer you an opportunity. But first, I suggest we talk in private." Ava's pulse quickened. She exchanged a quick glance with Alex. They both knew this wasn't a social visit. Ava, Elon, and Alex sat in the small conference room, facing Nathaniel Blackwell. His appearance was as polished as his demeanor, well-dressed, composed, and exuding confidence. "I've been monitoring your progress," Blackwell began, "and I must say, I'm impressed. You've managed to create something that could change the world." Ava crossed her arms, skeptical. "And what exactly do you want from us?" Blackwell leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "What I want is simple. I want to offer you a deal." "A deal?" Elon asked, his tone laced with suspicion. "You've been sabotaging our work, and now you want to offer us a deal?" Blackwell raised an eyebrow. "You misunderstand. I'm not here to destroy you. Quite the opposite. I want to help you. Together, we can build something far bigger than your propulsion system. I can ensure that your technology sees the light of day, under the right conditions, of course." Ava leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And what do you want in return?" Blackwell's smile was cool. "All I ask is that you align your efforts with ours. We have resources you can only dream of. In exchange for your cooperation, I can ensure that your technology is integrated into global systems. You'll change the world, but only if you play by our rules." Elon's jaw clenched. "And what happens if we don't cooperate?" Blackwell's smile faded slightly. "I'm afraid that could have unpleasant consequences. For all of you." The room fell silent, the weight of Blackwell's words sinking in. It was clear now that they weren't just up against an organization. They were facing an entire network of power, influence, and manipulation. And this man was part of it. Elon stood up, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "We didn't get into this business to bow to anyone. We're here to make a difference, on our own terms." Blackwell's eyes flickered with irritation, but he quickly masked it. "Very well," he said, standing up as well. "I thought you would choose the hard way." Ava stood up too, her heart pounding. "We'll take our chances. We'll expose you for what you are." Blackwell didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gave them a long, calculating look before speaking. "I'll let you make your decision. But know this, those who oppose us rarely get the chance to make a second move." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving a chilling silence in his wake. Ava, Elon, and Alex were left in the room, the tension hanging thick in the air. They knew they were no longer just innovators in a race against time. They were part of a much larger war, and the stakes had never been higher. "That was a warning," Elon said, his voice hard. "But it's also a chance. Blackwell wants us to join them, but he's underestimating us." Ava nodded, determination flooding her veins. "He won't stop us. We've come too far to back down now." Alex clenched his fists. "We need to prepare. They won't hesitate to strike back." They all knew it was only a matter of time before the full force of Blackwell's network came crashing down on them. But Ava wasn't afraid. This was her moment, not just to change the world with her technology, but to make sure it stayed in the right hands. Ava, Elon, and Alex huddled in the dimly lit lab, the glow of computer screens casting long shadows across their faces. The weight of their recent encounter with Nathaniel Blackwell loomed over them. Blackwell's warning was still fresh in their minds, the gravity of what they were up against now clearer than ever. They weren't just fighting for their technology, they were fighting for their lives. The clock was ticking, and they knew that if they didn't act quickly, they might never get another chance to expose the truth. The world was at a crossroads, and their work held the key to changing everything. But the path forward was fraught with danger, and there were no guarantees. "Do we go public now?" Ava asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she glanced at Elon and Alex. "Or do we finish the propulsion system first? The technology could change everything, but if we wait, Blackwell might make his move before we're ready." Elon leaned back in his chair, his hands steepled in thought. "The propulsion system is our weapon. But if we don't expose Blackwell's network now, we may lose everything anyway. If we're going to fight this fight, we need to go on the offensive. We can't let them control the narrative. Alex nodded in agreement. But how do we expose them? Blackwell's network is everywhere. We need more than just data. We need undeniable proof, something that will make it impossible for anyone to deny. Ava's mind raced as she thought through their options. There had to be a way to strike back, something that would force Blackwell into a corner. We need a failsafe, she said suddenly. A piece of evidence that's too big to ignore. Something that no amount of power can suppress. Elon's eyes lit up. We can use their own resources against them. Blackwell's network has been manipulating everything, from the media to world governments. But if we can get access to their central data hub, we might be able to uncover everything. Every transaction, every illegal operation, every secret they've been hiding. If we expose it, there's no way they can recover from it. With a plan in place, the trio set to work. They needed to infiltrate Blackwell's operation and access the data hub that was at the heart of the conspiracy. The only problem was that Blackwell had eyes everywhere, and the data hub was protected by layers of encryption, physical security, and a small army of guards. It was risky, but it was their only option. Ava had always prided herself on her ability to think on her feet. The night they'd spent prepping their strategy had been long, filled with research and data analysis. They had learned that the data hub was located in a heavily fortified building in a remote part of the city. It was almost impossible to get in undetected, but Ava knew exactly how to bypass the security systems. The key was timing. They couldn't afford to waste any time. The next morning, under the cover of darkness, they made their move. Elon, Ava, and Alex arrived at the outskirts of the building, their hearts pounding. The building loomed in front of them, tall, cold, and intimidating. It was surrounded by high walls and patrolled by guards. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. Elon took a deep breath. All right, here's the plan. Ava, you'll take care of the security systems. Alex and I will handle the guards. Ava nodded, slipping a small device into her pocket. I'll be in and out in minutes. I just need a clear path. Alex tightened his grip on the equipment bag slung over his shoulder. We'll keep an eye on you. Just don't take too long. With the plan set, they moved into position. Ava quickly hacked into the security system, using her skills to disable the cameras and unlock the main doors. Meanwhile, Elon and Alex took care of the guards stationed outside, using their knowledge of the building's layout to silently neutralize them. Once inside, Ava led the way, navigating the narrow hallways and avoiding security checkpoints. Every step felt like a countdown, and the tension was unbearable. They had no idea how long they had before Blackwell's men realized what they were up to. They reached the central control room, and Ava quickly began working on the main terminal. Sweat dripped from her brow as she typed furiously, bypassing firewalls and decrypting files in real time. Every second felt like an eternity. Almost there, she muttered under her breath. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Elon and Alex turned to face the approaching guards, their muscles tensing. We've got company, Elon whispered. Ava, hurry. Ava's fingers flew over the keyboard as she worked to finish the decryption. The tension was unbearable, and the clock was ticking. Finally, with a triumphant click, the system was unlocked. The data they needed was in front of them, a treasure trove of damning evidence. With the data in hand, they made their way to the exit, adrenaline pumping through their veins. But their escape wasn't going to be easy. As they neared the front door, alarms blared, signaling that their presence had been detected. The building was on lockdown. Move, Elon barked, urging them forward. They ran through the hallways, narrowly avoiding guards as they sprinted for the exit. The sound of boots pounding the floor echoed behind them, and they knew they were being hunted. Ava's heart raced as she glanced over her shoulder. We're not going to make it. Just as they neared the final door, the guards closed in, but with a final push, they burst out into the night, the cold air filling their lungs. They had done it. They had the evidence they needed. Back in the safety of their lab, Ava, Elon, and Alex prepared to make their final move. They knew that Blackwell and his network would stop at nothing to silence them. But this time, they had the upper hand. Elon stood before the camera, his face serious. Today, the world will see the truth. With a few clicks, the data they had stolen from Blackwell's network was broadcast to the entire world. Corrupt deals, illegal activities, and evidence of the vast conspiracy that had been manipulating world governments and economies for decades. The proof was undeniable. Ava's heart raced as she watched the screen. They had risked everything to bring this to light, and now it was in the world's hands. The response was immediate. Social media exploded with outrage. Protests broke out across the globe, and governments scrambled to respond. Blackwell's network was exposed, and its grip on power began to crumble. As the dust settled, Ava, Elon, and Alex knew that their fight was far from over. Blackwell and his associates wouldn't go down without a fight. But for the first time, they had a fighting chance. What now? Alex asked, looking at the others. Elon turned to Ava, his expression softening. Now, we finish what we started. The world is watching. It's time to build a future we can be proud of. Ava smiled, a sense of calm washing over her. We've just begun. And with that, they set their sights on the future. A future where technology would no longer be controlled by the few, but by the many. The events that had unfolded over the past few days had shaken the world to its core. With Blackwell's network exposed and the overwhelming evidence of corruption and manipulation now public, nothing would ever be the same. Governments, corporations, and individuals all over the world scrambled to deal with the consequences. It was as if a domino had fallen, and now everything was in motion, irreversible. For Ava, Elon, and Alex, the sense of victory was short-lived. Yes, they had successfully brought the truth to light, but the ramifications were only beginning. As they watched the news, their faces were a mix of exhaustion and determination. They knew this was just the beginning. Across the globe, the immediate aftermath of the broadcast was chaotic. Public outrage was palpable, with people pouring into the streets in protest. Governments were forced into damage control, with leaders scrambling to address the unprecedented scandal. The media coverage was nonstop, as the world processed the depth of Blackwell's conspiracy. In the United States, an emergency session of Congress was called, and international bodies like the United Nations were in turmoil. Allegations of espionage, election manipulation, and corporate collusion were flying fast and furious. How do we even begin to fix this? Ava muttered, her eyes glued to the news footage. Images of angry protesters holding signs demanding justice flashed across the screen. Elon sat back, his brow furrowed in thought. It's going to take time. A lot of time. The damage that's been done, it's systemic, but we've given the world the truth. Now it's up to the people to take that truth and demand accountability. Alex, who had been pacing nervously, stopped and looked at them. You think the government will really do anything about it? Or will they just try to sweep it under the rug? That's the big question, Elon replied. But we're not in control of that anymore. The people are. And that's why this moment is so important. As the dust began to settle, the trio knew they needed to keep pushing forward. The truth was out, but Blackwell's network had deep roots. They couldn't assume that the battle was won. That's when they received an unexpected message. It came in the form of a secure email from a source they didn't recognize, someone claiming to be an insider in one of the world's largest tech companies. Meet me in person. I have information that could change everything, the email read. Ava looked at the others. What do you think? Should we trust this? Alex raised an eyebrow. Could be a trap, or it could be the break we need. We'll go, Elon said decisively, but we'll be cautious. The meeting took place in an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. The three of them arrived together, alert and ready for anything. The door creaked open to reveal a man in his mid-30s, wearing a long coat and glasses. He looked around nervously before stepping into the dimly lit room. I'm Marcus, he said, his voice low. I was part of Blackwell's network for years, but I couldn't stand what they were doing anymore. I've been working to take them down from the inside. Ava stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. And why are you coming to us now? Marcus glanced at each of them, clearly weighing his words. Because I can't do this alone. You've already exposed them, but there's more to the story. More players in this game. If you want to make sure Blackwell doesn't just disappear into the shadows, I can't help you. Elon looked at Ava and Alex. Do we trust him? Ava nodded slowly. We don't have a choice. If he's telling the truth, this could be the lead we need. Marcus outlined his plan in detail. There were still hidden assets, funds, and operations connected to Blackwell's network that had yet to be uncovered. The man was a mastermind, and while he had been exposed, his followers were still very much a threat. We need to cut off his remaining resources, Marcus explained. That's the key to making sure his influence is completely eradicated. I can show you how to access the encrypted files, but you'll need to move quickly. There are people out there who want this all to disappear, and they're willing to kill for it. The weight of the mission settled heavily on their shoulders. What they had uncovered so far was just the tip of the iceberg. To fully dismantle Blackwell's operation, they would need to get their hands on his final assets, the last traces of his empire. But there was a catch. The data was stored in multiple locations across the world, and some of it was in the hands of people who were far more dangerous than Blackwell himself. This was no longer just about exposing corruption. It was about taking down a global criminal network that had infiltrated every corner of society. Over the following weeks, Ava, Elon, and Alex embarked on a global journey. They traveled to several countries, each time following a trail of clues left by Marcus. Along the way, they encountered new allies and enemies, each encounter more dangerous than the last. In Berlin, they broke into an underground facility where Blackwell's private data was stored, but they narrowly escaped a group of mercenaries hired to protect it. In Tokyo, they tracked down a financier who had been funneling money into Blackwell's operations. Each success was a victory, but they all knew that the closer they got to the final pieces of the puzzle, the more dangerous their mission would become. The final location was in a remote part of Russia, deep in the Siberian wilderness. Here, Blackwell had hidden his most valuable assets, his private network of connections that spanned the globe. The trio knew that this was their last chance to bring everything to an end. As they approached the facility, a sense of dread washed over them. The stakes were higher than ever. They were about to face the last remnants of Blackwell's empire, and the odds were stacked against them. But there was no turning back. In a final, heart-pounding showdown, they infiltrated the compound and confronted the people behind Blackwell's operation. In the end, they uncovered the last of Blackwell's secrets, an explosive revelation that would shake the world to its core. With the mission complete, Ava, Elon, and Alex returned home, their mission accomplished. But the world they returned to was forever changed. Blackwell's empire had been dismantled, and the global criminal network was in disarray. The battle for the truth was far from over, but Ava, Elon, and Alex had proven one thing. When the truth comes to light, there is no hiding from it. The world now had a chance to rebuild, to move forward into a new era, one where technology could be used for the good of all, not the few. But for Ava, Elon, and Alex, the journey was just beginning. After the dust had settled from the showdown in Siberia, Ava, Elon, and Alex found themselves back in their respective homes, but the weight of the mission still lingered. They had exposed one of the most powerful criminal networks in history, but the true implications of their actions were only beginning to unfold. For now, however, they could afford a brief respite, a moment to process what they had achieved, and what still lay ahead. Ava sat in her apartment, the television muted in front of her. News outlets were still covering the explosive revelations about Blackwell's network, and public interest remained at an all-time high. She watched the endless cycle of reports, but it felt distant now, as though the world was carrying on without her, without them. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from Elon. "We need to talk. Meet me at the lab." Ava sighed, her heart still heavy. She had expected this. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. She grabbed her coat and headed out the door. When Ava arrived at Elon's lab, she was greeted by the sight of Alex already there, pacing restlessly. Elon was hunched over a desk, scanning through multiple monitors filled with encrypted data. "You've been quiet," Alex remarked, noticing Ava's somber mood. Ava shrugged. "Just processing everything. It feels like the calm before the storm." Elon glanced up, his expression serious. "I think we're in that storm now." He turned the screen toward them, revealing a series of encrypted files, all linked to Blackwell's final hidden resources. There was something about the data that felt different. The files weren't just financial reports or corporate schematics. These contained blueprints for something far more dangerous. Elon, what is this? Ava asked, her voice low. It's a backdoor, Elon replied, running his fingers through his hair. A way to restart Blackwell's network. I thought we destroyed it all, but it turns out we missed one last piece. A contingency plan, if you will. Ava's eyes widened. Are you saying there's more to Blackwell's empire that we haven't even touched? Elon nodded grimly. Yes, and if we don't shut this down completely, it's going to come back with a vengeance. The trio knew that if they were to stop Blackwell for good, they would need to track down the final piece of his operation. This was no longer about exposing corruption. It was about preventing a global catastrophe. They spent the next few days gathering information, working around the clock to trace the origin of the backdoor. It led them to a powerful new player in the tech world, a shadowy figure known only as the Architect. No one knew who the Architect was, but their reach extended far and wide, connecting back to many of the corrupt systems Blackwell had once controlled. The Architect had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and now, with Blackwell gone, they were preparing to rebuild the network, stronger than ever. We can't let them do this, Alex said, his voice firm. This is the final piece. If we destroy it, they'll have nothing left. But if we fail, Ava began, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Elon finished her thought. Then everything we've done will have been for nothing. The world will fall back into chaos. Their strategy was clear. Find the Architect, track down the backdoor to Blackwell's empire, and shut it down once and for all. But this wouldn't be easy. The Architect's resources were vast, and they were surrounded by a network of loyal, ruthless individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their leader. Elon, Ava, and Alex prepared for their final mission with a sense of urgency. They didn't know where the Architect was hiding, but they had a lead. A data trail that led to a high-tech facility in an undisclosed location. This was the heart of the operation, and they would have to infiltrate it to destroy the network once and for all. As the trio set out for their destination, they knew this would be the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. They couldn't afford any mistakes. The fate of the world seemed to rest in their hands. The facility was a fortress, heavily guarded and secured by the latest technology. Elon's expertise in tech and hacking would be their greatest weapon, while Ava and Alex's skills in stealth and strategy would guide them through the labyrinth of security. The closer they got to the heart of the facility, the more tense the air became. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on them. But just as they were about to breach the final security checkpoint, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. They had been compromised. A voice crackled over their earpieces. It was a familiar voice, Marcus, the insider who had once been their ally. I warned you, Marcus said, his voice cold and distant. This was never going to end well. Ava's heart dropped. What are you talking about? We thought you were on our side. You were never meant to stop Blackwell, Marcus replied. You were merely pawns in a much bigger game. With that, the transmission cut off. They were surrounded. In that moment, everything changed. Marcus had betrayed them, and now they were trapped in a deadly game. The Architect's forces closed in, and the trio had no choice but to fight their way through. The next few hours were a blur of gunfire, quick decisions, and narrow escapes. They knew that if they didn't make it to the core of the facility in time, the Architect's network would be unstoppable. With each passing minute, the pressure mounted. Ava, Elon, and Alex fought side by side, knowing this could be their final stand. As they reached the core, they came face to face with the Architect, a figure cloaked in shadows, their face hidden behind a mask. You think you can stop this? You think you can stop progress? The Architect's voice echoed through the room. We're not here to stop progress, Elon replied, stepping forward. We're here to stop you from using it to destroy everything. A tense silence filled the room as the Architect raised their hand, signaling for the final confrontation to begin. In the end, it was a battle of wits and willpower. Using every ounce of their knowledge, skills, and resolve, the trio managed to shut down the backdoor network. The Architect's plans crumbled, and the final piece of Blackwell's empire was destroyed. With the facility in ruins, the world would never be the same. The trio had succeeded, against all odds. The dust had settled, but the victory came with a quiet intensity. As the last remnants of Blackwell's empire crumbled, a new world order began to take shape. Ava, Elon, and Alex stood on the precipice of something bigger than any of them could have imagined. The mission was over, but the consequences were only just beginning. Ava sat in her apartment, staring out the window. The city below buzzed with life, oblivious to the dangers they had narrowly avoided. People went about their daily routines, unaware of how close they had come to disaster. She thought back to the beginning of this journey, the day they discovered the scope of Blackwell's network. It felt like a lifetime ago now. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Elon. "We need to talk. In person." Ava hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. She had been expecting this. Despite their success, there was still so much to discuss. So much that hadn't been said. She grabbed her coat and left her apartment, heading straight to Elon's lab. When Ava arrived, she found Elon and Alex already there, deep in conversation. They looked up as she entered, and Elon gave her a solemn nod. It was clear that the weight of their success was heavier than they had anticipated. "What's going on?" Ava asked, her voice steady but curious. Elon gestured to a large screen in front of them. On it was a map, a digital representation of the global tech landscape, highlighting key players and networks. But there was something unsettling about it. There were gaps, areas of instability that shouldn't have been there. "I thought we were done," Alex said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "But this isn't over." "Not yet." Elon leaned forward. "There are other forces at play. The architect was just one piece of the puzzle. The world has changed, but so have the players. We need to find out who else is out there before they find us." Ava nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "So, what's our next move?" The trio spent the next few weeks gathering intel, working around the clock to piece together the remnants of Blackwell's empire. They discovered that, while the backdoor had been destroyed, many of the people who had supported Blackwell were still out there, operating in the shadows. Some were in high-ranking positions within governments, corporations, and underground organizations. And while they had managed to neutralize one threat, they couldn't afford to let their guard down. "This is bigger than we thought," Elon said one evening, running his hand through his hair. "The architect was just the tip of the iceberg. We need to uncover the full extent of this operation, and fast." Ava leaned back in her chair, deep in thought. "So we're not done. There's still a war to fight." Alex gave her a reassuring smile. "It's not over until we win, and we will win." As they dug deeper, the trio found themselves forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They couldn't do this alone. They needed help. But finding allies in a world so rife with corruption and deceit was easier said than done. Still, they began reaching out to old contacts, people they could trust, people who had been on the front lines of similar battles. One such ally was Evelyn, a former intelligence agent with deep connections to global power structures. She had helped them in the past and had made it clear that she was ready to assist again. "You're not the only ones who've been watching," Evelyn said during a secure video call. "There are more people out there who want to see these networks fall. But be careful. Not everyone who says they're on your side can be trusted." Ava nodded, taking in her words. "We know, but we have no choice." Weeks passed, and the trio continued their investigation, but just as they thought they were getting closer to uncovering the full scope of the network, a new threat emerged. A rogue group of former Blackwell operatives calling themselves the Vanguard. The Vanguard was unlike anything they had faced before. They were ruthless, well-organized, and highly skilled. It quickly became clear that this was not just a criminal organization. This was a shadow government, operating beneath the surface of society, with plans to reshape the world in their image. "We can't let them win," Elon said, his voice hard with determination. "If the Vanguard takes control, the world will never be the same." Ava felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "Then we have no choice but to stop them. We can't let history repeat itself." As the Vanguard's reach expanded, the trio began assembling a coalition of allies, intelligence agencies, private security firms, and former whistleblowers. Anyone who had the skills, resources, and motivation to take down this new threat. The first step was infiltration. They needed to get close to the Vanguard, understand their operations, and expose their plans to the world before it was too late. The stakes were higher than ever before. This was no longer just a battle against corruption. This was a fight for the future of humanity. "We can't afford to be cautious," Alex said, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to strike fast, hit them where it hurts." Ava agreed. "We don't have time to waste. The longer we wait, the stronger they get." As the world watched from the sidelines, the trio began their final mission. A mission that would either save the world or doom it to an uncertain future. They had no way of knowing how this would end, but they were determined to see it through. The Vanguard was closing in on their ultimate goal, a global takeover. But Ava, Elon, and Alex were ready. They had faced impossible odds before, and they knew that their greatest weapon was not just their knowledge, but their unbreakable bond. Together, they would face the storm. Together, they would stand against the dark forces that sought to control the world. And no matter the outcome, they would fight until the end. The world was on high alert. The Vanguard, now fully operational, had begun executing their meticulously planned takeover. With a network of loyal agents planted within key institutions across the globe, they moved like a shadow, unseen but ever-present. The trio, Ava, Elon, and Alex, knew the only way to stop them was to dismantle their operation piece by piece. But time was running out. It all started with a power outage in the heart of New York City, a calculated move by the Vanguard. The lights went out across the financial district, and in the ensuing chaos, millions of dollars were siphoned off from the stock exchange through a series of cyber attacks. It was a move meant to destabilize the global economy, and the ripple effects were already being felt around the world. Ava sat at a secure location, watching the news unfold. The magnitude of the attack hit her like a punch to the gut. "They've made their move," she said, her voice tight with worry. Elon leaned forward, his fingers flying over a series of holographic screens. "This is just the beginning. We knew they would act soon. But now they've shown their hand. The question is, what's their endgame?" Alex, pacing back and forth, shook his head. "If they have access to the financial system like this, they could bring entire countries to their knees. We have to stop them before they move on to the next phase." Ava exhaled sharply, her mind racing. "We've been reactive up until now. It's time to go on the offensive." The trio's first objective was clear. They needed to get to the heart of the Vanguard's operation. They had traced several key agents to a hidden facility deep in the Swiss Alps. The place was believed to be one of their main hubs, a stronghold where plans were made and executed. However, getting in would require more than just brute force. Elon tapped into his vast network of contacts, calling in favors and gathering intelligence from his most trusted allies. Ava used her network of hackers and intelligence sources to dig deeper into the Vanguard's encrypted systems. Alex prepared their team for a covert operation that would require them to move quickly and silently. "This has to be clean. We can't afford to leave any traces," Alex said, his eyes hard with focus. Ava nodded. "We've come this far. We finish it here." The journey to the Swiss Alps was treacherous, but nothing compared to what lay inside the facility. The trio and their small team arrived under the cover of night, slipping past security systems and guards with the precision of a well-oiled machine. They made their way into the heart of the facility, where the true scope of the Vanguard's plans began to take shape. Data terminals flashed with information on their next moves, a series of political coups, coordinated attacks on infrastructure, and the release of dangerous viruses into the global internet. Ava's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the data. "They're preparing for something far worse than we imagined," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon's face was grim. "They want to bring the world to its knees. This is the final step." Just as they were about to extract the data and make their escape, an unexpected twist threw their plans into disarray. One of their own, someone they had trusted, had turned against them. A Vanguard agent, embedded deep within their ranks, had sabotaged their mission. "Move. Now," Alex barked, his voice urgent. The facility's alarms began blaring, and their team scrambled to make a quick exit. The betrayal hit hard. The shock reverberated through their ranks as they fought their way out of the facility. Alex and Ava exchanged grim looks as they regrouped. Elon was already on his feet, his mind racing as he accessed the nearest terminal. I knew something was off, Elon muttered, his voice low. We've got a mole. We need to move faster than ever. The trio and their team barely managed to escape the facility, but not without casualties. The chase didn't stop there. As they fled through the snow-capped mountains, they were pursued by Vanguard agents, determined to prevent them from escaping with the crucial data. The stakes had never been higher. Every move was calculated, every second mattered. Ava, Alex, and Elon pushed themselves to the limit, knowing that failure was not an option. Finally, after a harrowing chase, they reached the extraction point. A helicopter swooped down, and they climbed aboard, breathless and battered, just as the Vanguard closed in. Back in their secure base, the trio debriefed, each of them processing the near-miss in their own way. The data they had gathered from the facility was groundbreaking. It revealed the Vanguard's true intentions, and it was worse than they had feared. They're planning to launch a series of coordinated attacks across the globe, Ava said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. They're targeting critical infrastructure, energy grids, communications, and transportation systems. They want to bring society to a grinding halt. Elon ran his fingers through his hair, frustration etched across his face. We've got to stop them before they go any further. But we can't fight this war with just a handful of people. We need a global response. Alex clenched his fists. So we go public. We expose them. Every last detail. Ava nodded. It's the only way to ensure the world stands with us. As the world grew increasingly unstable, the trio knew that time was running out. The Vanguard had already initiated their next phase of operations, and there was no turning back. Ava, Elon, and Alex now had to face the most difficult choice of their lives, whether to continue their covert fight or bring the truth into the light, risking everything in the process. In a final attempt to thwart the Vanguard's plans, they worked tirelessly, engaging in a race against time to warn the public. But the stakes were higher than they had ever been. Would the world rise to meet the challenge? Would they defeat the Vanguard and prevent a global catastrophe? Or would they fall victim to the darkness that had already begun to spread? The trio sat around a conference table in a high-tech, secure room, the atmosphere heavy with tension. The mission to expose the Vanguard was their final chance to stop them, but the risks were immense. Ava, Elon, and Alex knew that their every move was under scrutiny, and they had no room for error. The betrayal still stung, but there was no time to dwell on it. Their mole was out of the picture, and the data they had acquired from the Swiss facility could potentially change everything. It was time to act, but the decision wasn't easy. Revealing everything to the world meant the stakes were higher than ever. Ava glanced at Elon, her eyes narrowed in thought. We can't fight this war in the shadows anymore. The world needs to know what's coming. Elon nodded, but his face was taut with concern. If we go public, we risk destabilizing everything. People will panic. Countries could fall apart before we have a chance to act. Alex crossed his arms. We've been playing defense for too long. It's time to take the fight to them. The world has to stand with us. If we keep hiding, we give them the upper hand. The decision was made. The trio agreed to release the full extent of the Vanguard's plans to the public, trusting that the global community would rise to the challenge. Ava and her team worked tirelessly to prepare the data for release. The information was vast, every last detail of the Vanguard's operations, their covert agents within governments, corporations, and military institutions, and their plans for the global destabilization they were orchestrating. But getting it out was no easy task. It required a network of hackers, journalists, and whistleblowers from around the world. Ava's team worked with trusted allies in the media, ensuring that the information would spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the globe. As the countdown to the public reveal began, the weight of what they were about to do settled heavily on their shoulders. Once it was out there would be no going back. There would be no controlling the fallout. But it had to be done. The moment arrived. As the data was leaked across every major news outlet, social media platform, and encrypted network, the world's reaction was swift and explosive. Millions of people, from every corner of the globe, saw the truth about the Vanguard's plans. The revelation was staggering. Governments scrambled to respond. People took to the streets, demanding action. The financial markets, already on the edge from previous attacks, plummeted. But amidst the chaos, something remarkable happened. The world began to unite. Politicians, business leaders, and ordinary citizens alike recognized the gravity of the situation. Countries that had once been at odds began to form alliances, all determined to fight the common enemy. Ava, Elon, and Alex watched from their secure base as the world shifted before their eyes. For the first time in months, they felt a flicker of hope. Elon stood before a screen showing the world's response. He looked at Ava and Alex. "We've sparked something here. People are waking up. They know what's at stake. But we still have a long way to go." Ava nodded, her resolve strengthening. "The vanguard won't stop. They'll retaliate, and it won't be pretty. But now we have the momentum. We can organize the resistance." Alex clenched his jaw. "We need to keep moving. Every moment we waste is a moment the vanguard gets closer to completing their plan." Now that the world had been alerted, the true battle began. With the global community now aware of the vanguard's intentions, a new front of resistance formed. Countries began coordinating efforts to secure critical infrastructure, protect key personnel, and prepare for the worst-case scenarios. Ava's team became a central hub of intelligence, providing real-time data on vanguard movements and assets. Elon, as always, used his influence and resources to rally leaders and innovators across the globe, while Alex led covert teams on the ground, executing tactical operations to disrupt vanguard activities. Despite the chaos, there was a new sense of determination in the air. The world, it seemed, was finally willing to fight back. But the vanguard, as expected, didn't take kindly to their plans being exposed. Within hours of the information leak, they began retaliating with ferocity. Cyberattacks crippled government websites and communication networks. Military bases were targeted, their defenses compromised. In major cities, chaos ensued as vanguard operatives initiated attacks on power grids, transportation systems, and other key infrastructure. Ava, Elon, and Alex watched the devastation unfold in real time. Every move they made seemed to be met with an equal and opposite response from the vanguard. The world had united, but the enemy was far from defeated. "We knew they would strike back," Elon said, his voice low. "Now we have to stay one step ahead." Ava's face was hard with determination. "We can't let them win. We've come too far. We have to hold the line." As the global resistance began to coalesce, one critical breakthrough emerged. A hacker group, operating from within the vanguard's ranks, had managed to infiltrate their most secure systems. The information they provided was the key to finally crippling the vanguard's infrastructure. Elon's eyes lit up when he saw the data. "This is it," he said, as he connected the dots. "We can disable their operations for good." But there was one final hurdle. The vanguard's leader, the mastermind behind it all, was still at large. To completely dismantle their organization, they needed to find and neutralize this figurehead. With the information in hand, the trio led the charge on the final mission, locating and capturing the leader of the vanguard. It was a race against time. The leader was a shadow, elusive and dangerous, with a network of loyal followers scattered across the globe. But Ava, Elon, and Alex were no longer fighting in the dark. They were no longer alone. As they prepared for the final battle, the world watched, holding its breath. The resistance had united, and now they had one goal: to end the vanguard's reign once and for all. The battle for the future of the world had begun. Would the vanguard's insidious plans finally be thwarted? Or would the forces of chaos and destruction win? The tension in the air was palpable as Ava, Elon, and Alex prepared for the most crucial operation of their lives. The time for strategy and coordination was over. It was now or never. The world, still reeling from the revelations of the vanguard's plans, was united in a way it had never been before. Every country, every leader, and every citizen knew what was at stake. If the final mission failed, the world could spiral into an irreversible chaos. But if it succeeded, the vanguard would finally be stopped. From every corner of the globe, the resistance was ready. Armed with the intelligence Ava's team had worked tirelessly to secure, they were set to strike against the vanguard's most vital installations. But the key was always going to be their leader, who remained a mystery, an elusive figure who had orchestrated everything from the shadows. Ava, Elon, and Alex stood around the map of the compound, marking key locations where they believed the Vanguard leader was hiding. Their intel had led them to a remote island off the coast of Scandinavia, an area heavily fortified with high-tech security and an army of loyal Vanguard soldiers. But there was more. A hacker group had managed to infiltrate Vanguard's internal systems, revealing a coded message that led directly to the compound's most secure section. They now knew where the leader was, but they had to get there without alerting the entire compound. "It's all or nothing," Elon said, his voice calm but with an edge of urgency. "We either bring the house down, or we let them win." Ava nodded, her resolve steely. "We've come this far. We're not backing down now." Alex, always the strategist, was already analyzing the data. "We can't go in blind. We need to move quickly, take out their surveillance, and neutralize their forces before they know we're here." Under the cover of night, the team descended upon the island. They were joined by a group of elite operatives from the Resistance, each one handpicked for their skills and ability to carry out precision strikes. The plan was simple but dangerous. Infiltrate the compound, disable the security systems, and find the Vanguard leader before they could escape. Ava led the way, using her expertise in hacking to disable the island's security systems. With a few keystrokes, the night sky was lit up as the team's drones took out key surveillance points. The enemy's watchtower fell first, then the radar station. The compound, once heavily guarded, was now vulnerable. But they knew the biggest challenge still lay ahead, getting to the leader. As they neared the inner sanctum of the compound, the air grew colder, and the sense of danger heightened. This was where the Vanguard's leader was said to be hiding. It was a high-security vault buried deep beneath the earth, accessible only by the most advanced biometric systems. Ava's fingers flew over the console as she hacked into the vault's security, bypassing firewalls and disabling safeguards. But just as they thought they were in, the unthinkable happened. A loud alarm blared through the compound, red lights flashing as security forces flooded into the hallway. The Vanguard had discovered their infiltration. "Go, go, go!" Alex shouted, pushing the team forward. Gunfire echoed in the corridors as Resistance operatives clashed with Vanguard soldiers. The team moved swiftly, but there was no time to waste. Every moment they delayed brought them closer to the Vanguard's leader escaping. Elon led the charge, using his knowledge of high-tech weaponry to incapacitate the enemy's forces. He fired a laser-guided round at an enemy soldier's gun, disarming him in one clean shot. But it was Ava's hacking skills that truly turned the tide. As the team made their way to the vault door, Ava hacked into the system again, overriding the final security measures. With a click, the door swung open. Inside, the Vanguard's leader was waiting. Cloaked in shadows, the figure stood tall, with a calm and eerie composure. The room was filled with monitors, displaying maps, data feeds, and global news. It was clear that this was the brain behind the chaos, the one who had been orchestrating everything from the shadows. "I knew you would come," the leader said, his voice cold and emotionless. "But you're too late." Ava stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "We've been one step ahead of you all along. You're finished." The leader's lips curled into a smirk. "You think you've won? The Vanguard has already set the stage for global collapse. You can stop one operation, but it's only a matter of time before the world is ours." Alex clenched his fist. "Not if we stop you here." But before the situation could escalate further, the leader pressed a button on his desk, triggering a countdown timer on the wall. "What is this?" Elon demanded. "Your time's up," the leader replied. "This is just the beginning. You won't be able to stop us." Just as the countdown hit 0, Ava realized what had happened. The Vanguard leader had triggered a fail-safe, one that would destroy the entire facility and take them all down with it. But Ava was ready. With a surge of adrenaline, she reached for her communicator. "Everyone, fall back now. We've got seconds before this place blows." The team raced through the compound, narrowly dodging explosions as the entire facility began to shake. The leader's final trick was one last attempt to take them down, but they weren't going to let him win. The underground tunnels they had discovered earlier were their only hope for escape. With seconds to spare, they sprinted through the dimly lit passages, avoiding security checkpoints and dodging debris as the compound crumbled around them. They emerged on the surface, breathless and covered in dust. just as the facility erupted in a massive explosion behind them. As the dust settled and the sun began to rise, the world waited. News outlets around the world were broadcasting live as the explosion at the Vanguard facility made headlines. But the resistance had won. The Vanguard's leader was captured, and with his arrest, the global network of operatives was dismantled. It wasn't over, but it was a massive victory in the war against them. Ava, Elon, and Alex stood on the shore, watching as the sun rose over the horizon. The war wasn't won, but the world had taken a decisive step forward. People were free, and they had hope again. "We did it," Ava said, a rare smile playing at the corners of her lips. "But we still have work to do." Elon nodded, his gaze focused. "The world is changing, but this is just the beginning." The dust had barely settled, but the world was already buzzing with the implications of what had just happened. The explosion at the Vanguard facility had sent shockwaves across the globe, but it was not just the explosion that everyone was talking about. The world had witnessed the fall of the most powerful covert organization in modern history. Ava, Elon, Alex, and the rest of the resistance had done the unthinkable. They had brought down a force that seemed unstoppable. But now, with the Vanguard's leader captured and the remnants of the organization scattered, the question on everyone's mind was, what now? The air was thick with both relief and uncertainty. As the team made their way back to their headquarters, they couldn't help but reflect on what they had achieved and what lay ahead. There was no denying that they had struck a monumental blow to the Vanguard, but the true test had just begun. Ava leaned against the window, looking out at the city skyline. The sun had finally risen, casting long shadows across the urban landscape. It was a symbol of hope, but it also reminded her of the immense responsibility now resting on their shoulders. "We've taken down the enemy," Alex said, his voice breaking the silence. "But this isn't over. The world won't change overnight." Elon, sitting at the table, stared at the map of global operations. The Vanguard might be gone, but there are still factions, cells, and individuals who will try to rebuild it. We need to be ready for the long game. Ava had always been the heart of the team, the one who believed in the power of knowledge, technology, and human ingenuity. But as she reflected on the events, she couldn't ignore the emotional toll it had taken on her. The stakes had never been higher, and the constant weight of responsibility had been heavy on her shoulders. Her mind wandered back to the moment when they had been racing through the compound, seconds away from being caught in the explosion. She had felt fear, but more than that, she had felt something else, the responsibility of leading them to safety. She had made quick decisions in those final moments, and it had saved their lives. But it also made her question if she was truly ready to lead the world toward a new future. As the resistance team regrouped, the global response was swift. Governments that had once been divided by their distrust of one another were now coming together to fight the remnants of the Vanguard's influence. New alliances were forged, and old ones were tested. Everyone realized that if they were to avoid the chaos that the Vanguard had planned for them, they needed to collaborate. Elon and Alex worked tirelessly to connect with leaders from every corner of the globe, setting up a new framework for global cooperation. They knew that the war against corruption and manipulation was far from over, but it was a fight they were now prepared to take on together. "The world is coming together," Elon remarked one evening as they sat down for a strategy meeting. "But we can't let our guard down. There are still cells operating in the shadows, and they will try to rebuild. Our work is far from done." While Ava and the team had dismantled the heart of the Vanguard, it was clear that new leaders would need to emerge to guide the world into a new era. Ava knew this better than anyone. She had spent so many years working on the tactical side of things that she had never really thought about her own potential to lead. But now, with the world watching and the resistance rallying behind her, it was clear that she couldn't shy away from her role in this new world. "I never planned on being a leader," Ava admitted one night to Elon, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I've always been a strategist, but now, I don't know what comes next." Elon turned to her, offering a rare smile. "Sometimes, leadership finds you, but you're ready. You've been ready all along." The first major challenge came quickly. As the world's governments began to stabilize and the remnants of the Vanguard were hunted down, it became evident that one of the greatest threats was the sheer amount of misinformation that had spread over the years. The Vanguard had used technology and media manipulation to deceive the masses, creating a fractured reality that had made it nearly impossible for people to trust one another. Ava, Elon, and Alex knew they had to act fast. The world needed a unified message, one that could help people regain trust in each other and in their governments. The problem was how to craft this message without falling into the same traps that the Vanguard had used. We need transparency, Alex argued. But we also need to be strategic. We can't just tell the world the truth. We have to show them. Elon agreed. We need to build something that can counteract the deep divisions. A new platform for dialogue, one that empowers people and gives them the tools to make their own decisions. After weeks of planning, the team decided that Ava would deliver the first public address. She was the voice that had led them through the darkest moments, and now she would be the one to usher in a new era of hope and collaboration. On the day of the speech, the world held its breath. The broadcast went live, and millions of people tuned in. Ava stood in front of a global audience, the weight of her responsibility heavy on her shoulders, but her resolve firm. "We have just witnessed something extraordinary," she began. "The fall of an organization that threatened the future of humanity. But this victory is not just ours. It belongs to everyone. The Vanguard believed they could divide us, control us, and tear us apart. But they were wrong." Her words rang out with strength and clarity. She spoke of unity, of collaboration, and of the power of the individual. She reminded the world of their shared humanity and the importance of trust. "We are entering a new chapter," she concluded, "one where we build together, not apart. The road ahead will not be easy, but we will walk it together. This is our moment. This is our future." The speech was the catalyst for the next phase of the world's recovery. People began to rebuild their communities, governments worked together, and technology was repurposed for the common good. The resistance had succeeded, but the world was not simply returning to what it once was. It was evolving, becoming stronger, and more united. Ava, Elon, and Alex knew that their work was far from over. The battle against corruption, manipulation, and division was ongoing. But for the first time in years, they had hope. The world had taken its first steps toward healing, and it was just the beginning. As the team gathered one last time at their headquarters, they looked ahead to the future. The world was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. And for the first time in a long while, Ava felt ready. Ready to lead, ready to face the challenges ahead, and ready to fight for a better tomorrow. The journey was far from over, but with the world's attention focused on the possibilities ahead, anything seemed possible. The world was shifting. The victory against the Vanguard had not only disrupted a powerful, shadowy organization, but had also sparked a fire of change across the globe. Governments, once divided by politics and distrust, were now forced to reckon with the new reality. A reality where transparency, collaboration, and collective progress were the new norms. Ava, Elon, Alex, and the resistance team had become symbols of hope, leaders not just in their respective fields, but to the people whose lives had been disrupted by the fall of the Vanguard. Ava stood before the newly established United Global Coalition, a council that had been formed to represent all nations. The chairperson, a once distrustful former enemy, now stood by her side. They had put aside their old grudges for the sake of humanity's future. "Now is the time to prove that we can do better," Ava said, her voice steady but charged with passion. "The Vanguard was successful because they preyed on fear and division. But we together will be stronger. We must rebuild our trust, not just in governments, but in each other. Only then can we begin to heal." The assembly was silent, and for the first time in decades, there was a shared sense of purpose. They were ready to unite. Elon had never been the most conventional leader. His genius had always been in his ability to think outside the box, and now, the world needed him to do just that. Working alongside Ava and Alex, he proposed a new initiative, a global data transparency network, one that would allow anyone, anywhere, to verify information and track decisions made by governments and corporations alike. "We can't let history repeat itself," Elon explained during a press conference. The Vanguard thrived because people couldn't distinguish truth from lies. This new platform will change that. It will empower individuals to hold power accountable in ways that were never possible before. It was a radical concept, yet it resonated with the world. As countries started adopting the new platform, it became clear that they were moving toward a new era of openness. While Elon tackled global transparency, Alex took it upon himself to shape the next generation. As someone who had grown up in the shadows of secretive organizations, Alex understood better than anyone that the future of humanity lay in education. He launched a global initiative to reform the educational systems, making them more inclusive, more technologically advanced, and focused on critical thinking. Education is the bedrock of any society, Alex said during his first address to the United Global Coalition. We must ensure that every child, regardless of their background, has access to the tools they need to succeed. This is how we prevent the rise of future organizations like the Vanguard. His initiative was immediately backed by a majority of nations, leading to the creation of a global network for educational reform. It wasn't long before new generations of thinkers, innovators, and leaders began emerging from every corner of the world. Though the Vanguard was no longer a major force, remnants of its influence still lingered in the shadows. Small factions of its former operatives, who had been left without leadership, started regrouping. These groups sought to exploit the nascent order and reclaim their influence. The resistance had to stay vigilant. "We cannot let our guard down," Ava warned her team. "The real challenge will be preventing the rise of new powers who wish to return to the old ways." It was a constant struggle. As the world began to rebuild, these remnants made calculated strikes, hoping to destabilize the new system. The resistance remained ready, working covertly and quietly, watching for any signs of rebellion. As the world adapted to the new order, Ava began to feel the weight of her role more heavily. She had been thrust into the spotlight during a global crisis, but now, she was beginning to question if she was truly the leader the world needed. Late one evening, as she gazed out over the city from the balcony of their headquarters, Elon joined her. She was quiet for a long moment, struggling with the doubts that had taken root in her heart. "I didn't ask for this," she said finally. "None of us did. I thought I was just helping to dismantle the Vanguard, but now, I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world." Elon smiled gently. "You don't have to carry it alone, Ava. None of us are. We all have a role to play, and you've already proven your worth. You've led us through the hardest battles." Ava turned to face him. "But what if I fail? What if I can't keep it all together?" "You won't fail. You've already succeeded more than most could ever dream." Ava smiled, feeling a sense of comfort. There was still much to do, but she wasn't alone in this. In the final stages of the global reconstruction, Ava, Elon, and Alex realized that it wasn't enough to simply dismantle an organization. They needed to rebuild the trust and systems that had once been corrupted by power. This required global cooperation, constant dialogue, and the ever-present vigilance of the people. Ava addressed a crowd in the heart of the newly built global citadel, a symbol of peace and unity. "This is the dawn of a new era," she declared. "One where the mistakes of the past are not repeated. A world built on truth, unity, and shared progress." The crowd erupted into applause, a powerful, collective acknowledgement of the change that had taken place. For the first time in a long while, the future looked bright. The final chapter of their journey was not about resting on their laurels. Ava, Elon, Alex, and the rest of the team knew that the work was far from over. Their story was just beginning. Ava took one last look at the city skyline, the world's rebirth reflected in the glass of the towering buildings. The fight against the remnants of the Vanguard would continue, and new challenges would arise. But for the first time in years, she felt a deep sense of peace. The world had been changed. The road ahead was unknown, but they had laid the foundation for a better future. The world had changed. What had started as a series of impossible odds had now evolved into a future that was brighter, more hopeful, and more connected than ever before. The battle against the Vanguard was over, but the war for a better world had just begun. Ava, Elon, Alex, and the entire team stood at the pinnacle of a global shift. In the newly constructed global citadel, which symbolized unity and the triumph of truth, the team gathered for one final moment of reflection. The citadel stood tall in the heart of the city, its sleek towers reflecting the progress they had made. It was not just a physical structure, but a beacon of everything they had fought for: freedom, transparency, and a world no longer ruled by fear. As Ava stepped onto the balcony, the weight of the journey felt almost tangible. She gazed at the horizon, where the setting sun painted the sky with a mixture of fiery reds and soft oranges. The city below was alive, buzzing with the hum of progress and renewal. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Alex asked, joining her at the railing. Ava smiled, though there was a tinge of sadness in her eyes. "Every day. There were times I thought we wouldn't make it, but here we are, standing together, stronger than ever." Elon, who had been silently watching the world from his own vantage point, turned to them. "We've changed the world, but there's always more to do. The path forward isn't without challenges. There will always be those who resist change, but we've built something that can't be undone." Elon's words resonated deeply. While the battle against the vanguard had been won, the seeds of resistance still lay scattered throughout the world. New challenges would arise, whether from remnants of old organizations or the emergence of new threats that sought to exploit the fragile peace. But for the first time in history, the world was not facing these challenges alone. Countries had formed new coalitions, and the once distant nations were now united in their commitment to one another's survival. The Global Data Transparency Network had allowed ordinary citizens to hold their governments accountable, ensuring that the actions of the powerful were always under scrutiny. Alex's educational reforms were inspiring a new generation of thinkers and innovators, children who would never grow up under the shadow of the secrets that once plagued the world. Ava turned to Elon and Alex. "We've come a long way, but this is just the beginning, isn't it?" Elon nodded. "It's a new chapter. We've built the foundation for a future that values truth, integrity, and collaboration. It's up to the next generation to carry this torch forward." While the world had changed, Ava, Elon, and Alex knew that their work was far from over. They had laid the groundwork for a new era of peace, but it would be up to everyone to ensure it endured. They had created a world where people were no longer isolated in their struggles, where every individual's voice mattered, and where knowledge and truth were within reach for all. Their legacy would live on not just in the systems they created, but in the hearts and minds of the people who would continue their mission long after they were gone. In a final address to the world, Ava stood before millions of viewers, her voice steady, filled with purpose. The events of the past years had shown her the power of unity, and she knew that the world would continue to thrive only if they stayed true to the lessons they had learned. "We've learned that the greatest strength comes from togetherness. No individual is too small to make a difference. Every voice matters. And together, we can build a future that is not just free from fear, but full of hope." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound of unity echoing across the globe. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava took a deep breath, knowing that their work would never be complete. But that was not a burden. It was a challenge, one she and the world were ready to meet. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, there was hope in the air.